Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments, and if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I'm a farmer, and I do pretty well. Yep, that's me, Caden McLeish. I own a farm, grow crops, take care of trees, have horses, and find any way to make some income. I'm of Scottish descent, which some might think makes me quiet, but that's not really me. Sure, I can be serious at times, but I take pride in my work. Once I got started, my farm began to grow. I'll share how I came to own it later. I found some good help along the way. I planted corn and soybeans on most of the open land, but I also saved a large area for vegetables like strawberries, tomatoes, cantaloupes, and beans. Living close to the ocean has brought me some great chances. Years ago, the distance from my farm, which belonged to my great-grandmother, to the beach seemed far. However, as nearby ocean resorts grew in the 1980s, starting a bit earlier in the 1950s, getting to the beach became easier with the new highways. I connected with other farmers and fruit sellers, and the beach turned into a valuable place for us. I've had a lot of success during the summers. In winter, I had more free time. I owned horses and got involved in horse races, even having my own horse. But I was curious to find new ways to make money. During my time in the Army, I had a lot of free time. While others went out to bars and played pool, I learned to play poker, enjoying games such as five-card draw and Texas Hold'em. Across the East Coast, there have always been poker games. Players like me need to be careful. Some games can be risky. It's best to avoid big cities where the stakes are higher, like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., or New York. These places attract skilled players who can take advantage of newcomers. Think of poker like horse racing. Big tracks with top horses can be hard to read, while smaller tracks allow for better guesses. The same goes for poker. In smaller towns, the competition can be less intense. I found decent poker games in mid-sized towns in Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, although they often don't last long due to cheating and other issues. This makes the results unpredictable. Sometimes the games are great, other times they are not so good. Right now, I'm at one of those games that has turned sour, and my life is about to change significantly. Cheating is common in these small-town games where outsiders like me show up. Just so you know, I'm not here to teach, and new cheating tricks show up all the time, so you need to stay alert. Poker can go on for hours, and it's said that if a player doesn't spot the weaker players after a couple of hours, they might be in trouble. I've noticed that those who cheat often become less careful as time goes on. There are many ways to cheat holding cards in a sneaky way, marking them, using devices, or teaming up with others to manipulate the game. With experience, it gets easier to notice these tricks, but if you ever feel uncomfortable in a game, it's best to leave. One common trick is trying to get an idea of an opponent's hand, often by distracting them. In a rather rough back room of what used to be a decent bar, I found myself surrounded by opportunists. Many players were just looking to take advantage of those who were vulnerable. I've seen people fall into traps of their own making. It happens more often than you think. I had been in a Texas Hold'em game for almost 5 hours, and I didn't take breaks as the pots got larger. I limited my eating and drinking, and as the stakes kept rising, the atmosphere grew tense. There was a woman nearby who had been lingering for a while. The host seemed to know her and what she was doing, even if I wasn't supposed to notice. But it was pretty obvious. She kept trying to distract me or take peeks at my cards. It was clear what she was doing, and it wasn't going to work. She seemed older than I expected, maybe in her 30s, and looked quite nervous. I might have felt sympathy for her if I didn't realize she was likely working for someone else there. I kept a discreet eye on her movements. Maybe that was all her boss wanted. What struck me most was her anxiety. I'd been winning some rounds, and I could see that the host and another player were teaming up against me. At that moment, the pot had grown to around $4,000, not small change. She must have signaled her boss because I noticed him change his demeanor. He looked confident, as if he had me beat. He added a large amount to the pot, and his partner raised it even more. Now it was my turn. I sensed that the boss had a better hand, but he wasn't very skilled. I put in my chips. I call. On the table, there was a jack, a 9, and a 3. The other player showed a jack and a 9. 2 pair, he said confidently. I revealed my cards. 3 threes, I said. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he turned to the woman beside him and muttered angrily. As I leaned forward to collect my winnings, something unexpected happened. He called over someone from behind the bar. "Hey, give me your belt!" I paused, confused. What was happening? He turned to the woman and said, "Come here." She hesitated, clearly nervous. He raised his voice and began scolding her harshly. I was shocked. It was clear she had made a mistake, but her reaction surprised me. Things got tense fast. He shouted for someone to bring a bag and a rope. The atmosphere in the room thickened. The woman looked frightened. I started to push my chair back. I thought it might be a good time to leave, not wanting to stick around for whatever was happening. The man kept raising his voice. The woman fell to the ground, obviously overwhelmed. Then the assistant came back with the items. At that moment, it became clear that things had gotten way too serious. Everyone at the table was silent, eyes wide. She seemed barely able to stay awake, gasping and clearly in pain. I felt stuck. If I walked out now, things might worsen for her, and I could get involved later. I needed to do something. Calmly, I leaned back and asked, "What do you want for her?" He hesitated. "What? How much is she worth?" I repeated. "You want her?" he said, looking puzzled. "Yeah," I said. "I'll take her." He looked between her and me. "Why would you want her?" I shrugged. Just felt drawn to her. Some people at the table laughed a little, trying to ease the mood. She still looked unwell. He asked, "What are you willing to pay?" I pulled out some cash from my coat, another 1,000. I threw it on the table. "How about that?" He examined the money, then turned to his assistant. "Let her go." The assistant took something off her head. She fell back onto the floor, coughing. "You want her?" the man asked. "She's yours." I stared him in the eye. "I want a receipt." He blinked. "You want a what?" She was lying on the floor, coughing, but still alive. I told Vince, "I need proof before I leave that she's no longer your responsibility." Vince looked at his assistant. "Get me some paper and a pen." I leaned back and waited, avoiding her eyes. I didn't want to show sympathy, as Vince seemed to think he was getting a great deal. The assistant returned. Vince scribbled something quickly, wrote, $5,000, 00 for Caprice, then signed and dated it. He handed me the paper. "She's yours." I knew it was time to wrap things up, but I stayed a little longer. Losing a little more might help me leave without raising suspicion. I pointed to the floor beside my chair. "Here." My voice was steady. She slowly moved and sat down. I adjusted the rope carefully but securely, more for appearance than to keep her restrained, then tied it to a chair leg. "Whose turn is it to deal?" The table chuckled while I prepared for the next round. The game dragged on for another couple of hours. Everyone kept watching us. I ignored their stares and tried to seem indifferent toward her, even as I glanced her way occasionally. She looked cold and weak. The floor beneath her was hard tile. I guessed she hadn't been well even before this night, and things weren't helping. When I checked my watch, it was nearly sunrise. I had been there for over 10 hours, and I had lost quite a bit. The crowd around the table had shifted. They looked rougher, less friendly. Vince's group gave off a vibe that made me want to leave quickly. I looked at the woman on the floor. She didn't seem good. I reread the paper. Caprice. "All right, Caprice. Time to get out of here." She looked up, her gaze dull. I could see she had been through a lot. But I felt that if I didn't help her now, she might not make it. I stood, untied the rope from the chair, and glanced around. There was a small restroom nearby. "Come on," I said, giving the rope a light tug to encourage her to stand. I tried to maintain my role, not showing any compassion. She followed me into the restroom. Inside, I pointed. "Sit here." She did. For a moment, she looked confused about what I wanted. I shook my head. "Don't move." She sat still while I took off my coat and the shirt underneath. I hung them up and adjusted my clothes to give her some cover. I wasn't going to let her leave looking like this. We didn't need any attention. I handed her my shirt to wear, and she put it on slowly. It was a bit big, but it covered her. I made sure it didn't look too messy. Her face still had too much makeup, and she looked like she hadn't slept for days. "Stand up," I said. "Now stay still." I gave her my extra clothing to ensure she looked decent enough to walk out without attracting attention. She followed my instructions, shaking and still clearly scared. I paused for a moment. "I just got you out of there," I said softly. "Do you understand?" She nodded. "If I leave you here, I can't say what might happen. If you come with me, it might not be perfect, but it's a chance. What do you want?" She looked at me for a long time, unsure of what to say. Finally, she spoke quietly. "I'd like to go with you." "Then listen carefully," I said, gripping the rope. "When we leave this room, stay right behind me. Keep your hands on the rope. Don't look around. Just focus on my back. You're with me now, and if anyone sees you hesitate, they might think the wrong thing." She nodded again, still a bit dazed. The paper Vince gave me didn't mean much in a legal sense, but in her world, it represented a change, a new start. I needed to get us both out quickly and quietly. We exited the restroom into a quiet room. The game had ended, and only a few people were left, cleaning up or talking softly. I headed straight toward the back stairs. I could hear her behind me, stumbling a bit. I counted the steps as she followed me, 13 in total. We reached the door. I opened it, and we stepped outside. A few men were hanging around near the alley, watching us. I kept walking. My truck was parked nearby, an old Suburban with an extended cab and a covered bed. I had checked it earlier, and everything seemed fine. I opened the passenger door and helped her in, adjusting the seat so she could be more comfortable. Then I walked around, got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and slowly drove away. I had no idea how much my life was about to change. As we headed home, I didn't see anyone following us, but I stayed alert. Vince and his group might soon realize they let someone go by mistake. The morning sun was just starting to rise. I glanced over at the woman next to me. She looked very tired, her arms crossed tightly in her lap. She leaned back in her seat, looking like she had shut down. I knew the drive home would take about 7 hours. She needed rest, so I decided not to stop until we were far from Dover, Delaware. I planned to get her some simple clothes from a store to make her more comfortable. Food could wait until we reached the farm. I didn't want her to feel sick in the car. She tilted her head against the window, drifting in and out of sleep. I looked at her again. "Would you like something to drink?" She gave a small nod. "How about a Coke?" Another small nod. She seemed like she hadn't talked much in a long time, or maybe she just didn't know what to say. There was something delicate about her response, as if she hadn't had a say in her life for a while. I stopped at a convenience store and went inside. I bought 2 bottled sodas. I knew bottles would be safer than cups. Back in the truck, I opened hers and put in a straw before handing it to her. She took a sip and held the bottle carefully, as if trying to keep a little bit of grace. Maybe there was more to her than others had noticed. "Try to get some rest," I said. "I'll wake you up before we get to my place." She didn't answer, just nodded lightly. She didn't ask where we were going. Maybe she didn't care or was just too tired to think. The long drive gave me time to think. I didn't know exactly what I had gotten into, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to leave her somewhere. That wasn't an option. So maybe I should start from the beginning, a little about myself. I was born on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland and Delaware. Most of my life and most of this story takes place there. I was born early, 2 months before my due date. My mother passed away shortly after giving birth, and I never got to know her. I was the 3rd child in a farming family. My relatives owned land south of Selbyville, Delaware, west of the main highway. My early life wasn't easy. After my mother died, I was left alone in a back room, and it was winter, but a kind woman from the community found me. She wrapped me in blankets and kept me warm. Despite everything, I survived. Eventually, my relatives took me in. I didn't receive much love, but I had enough structure to make it through. This taught me 2 things. People can surprise you, and help can come from unexpected places. My great-grandmother and her 4 children lived close to my father. It was my great-grandmother who agreed to take me in. Truthfully, my great-grandmother didn't have much to do with me since my mother was a Jewish girl named Elshiva. That's how they might have spelled it. I'm not sure, since they changed her name when she married my father. They made her go by Elizabeth, or Lizzie, as I was told. Her father had been a jeweler. How she and my father fell in love, I'll never know. He was a tall man, 6'4", married to a small, dark-haired woman of 5'2". I came too soon due to a failed procedure, and neither my mother nor father wanted me. Honestly, I don't think my great-grandmother wanted me either. She had convinced 4 of her 7 children not to marry. Her husband died young after getting sick on a fishing trip, and I think she was afraid of being alone. These 4 unmarried people were 2 brothers and 2 sisters. The oldest was named John. I never liked him. He struggled with drinking and died young. The youngest was Mitchell, who had been in the military and suffered from health issues. He spent most of his life just trying to breathe. That left the women, 2 sisters, Margaret and Olive. Aunt Margaret mostly raised me, but Aunt Olive helped too. Aunt Olive had to help out because Aunt Margaret was a bit unpredictable. All 4 of these older relatives were actually my great-aunts and uncles, but I called them aunt and uncle. They were already older when I moved in with them. I had regular aunts and uncles, my father's siblings, but I hardly ever saw them. They weren't very kind people anyway. I never learned much about my grandfather. I heard he found his wife with another man. He walked a sad path and no one ever talked about him. I didn't really care anyway. Among the 5 older people who raised me, Aunt Olive was the smartest. She trained to be a nurse but returned home to take care of her mother and siblings. Aunt Margaret, whom I called Maggie, was the one who really raised me. She was the only one I truly loved. In fact, besides one other person I met later, I never thought about loving anyone else. My upbringing was a bit unusual. I felt like an only child. Aunt Maggie made sure I was left alone. I got just about everything I wanted, and I was lucky she lived the longest. Why is that important? I have 2 brothers and a sister from my biological mother, and another 2 half-brothers and a half-sister from my father's second wife. There are also 7 more cousins from other relatives I barely knew. My grandfather was one of the 3 brothers who actually left my great-grandmother, who had 5 children, all with families of their own. If Aunt Maggie hadn't left me the farm, it likely would have been split among more than 30 people. All these siblings, uncles, and cousins could have claimed the farm I grew up on if it weren't for Aunt Maggie. She gifted me a nice farm, over 300 acres of cleared land, another 160 acres of woods, and about 20 acres along a river in Delaware. She left it all to me. Not bad for someone who came into the world too soon and wasn't really wanted. Honestly, I had a good life in some ways. But growing up was also tough. For starters, I always had enough money. I got a car when I turned 16, I was driving pickups when I was just 12, but I had to take on most of the chores. I didn't have to do much actual farming since John and Mitchell handled that, but we had at least 2 horses, along with the usual chickens, dogs, cats, and pigs. My uncles dealt with the crops, while I took care of the animals and maintained the property. We had 2 barns, chicken houses, and a few other buildings. Even though we had indoor plumbing, I still had to take care of the outhouse. They were afraid that if the electricity went out, we'd need it. I guess it made sense. Now everyone is probably wondering about the person sitting next to me. It's a long drive, so I want everyone to know that I'm not struggling for money. I have land and resources. What I lack are friends, and my love life hasn't gone well. The person next to me only highlights that. How I messed up my life from the start. I had a great time in high school. I enjoyed my days a bit too much during my sophomore, junior, and senior years. My first true love was Aunt Maggie, and still would be if another woman hadn't entered my life. Her name is Angie. Angie is not the person beside me. The person next to me is Caprice. Angie is someone else entirely. Angie started off as this perfect girl. Her parents raised her to be a good, moral person. I'm a Christian too. Well, I'm working on it. Angie got great grades, went to church every Sunday, and always behaved well through her senior year. Her problems didn't begin until she graduated and got involved with me. Honestly, Angie was never what you'd call very pretty. She was a small girl, wore glasses, and had dark brown hair and eyes. If you remember those kids in the top classes at school, you might recall that many of the less conventionally attractive girls ended up there. That was Angie. I took one look at Angie and thought she was someone I could have fun with. I don't mean in a nice way. I mean I saw her as someone I could control. I can't explain why I felt that way or why I treated her like I did. I was just angry all the time, angry, lonely, and unkind. I was a troublemaker, while Angie was a really good person. You probably know how I influenced her. I introduced her to drinking and smoking. I took this sweet, innocent girl and completely changed her. I admit it. I ruined her. How was I supposed to know she had an addictive personality? Alcohol excited her, and some experiences made her wild. There were times I could convince her to do things she wouldn't normally think of. I could pressure her into uncomfortable situations, and that made me realize how far I could go. One moment stood out to me, where I realized she would do anything I asked. That's when I started to change. At least I began to think differently about Angie. I began to believe there was someone besides my aunt who might care about me. It was almost unbelievable that there could be another person who cared whether I lived or died. Watching her that day made me realize she truly would do anything for me. The joke should have been on Angie, but in the end, I fell in love with her and married her. If falling in love was my first mistake, then marrying her was my second. Remember this. I was a loner who wanted and needed no one. I had no real friends, and I was okay with that. But I was, and still am, a farmer. Some seasons mean long hours, and as my relatives aged, I had to take on more of their work. Poor Angie either couldn't or wouldn't wait around all day and night for me to come home. I had no idea how much she had changed. Little Angie needed help, and along with that came her need for attention. If I wasn't home, she didn't wait for me. There were times I would come home late after long hours of work, only to find that my wife was in a tough spot. I knew I was allowing things to get out of control, but it was mostly my fault. I had taken this sweet girl and changed her life completely. Sure, my friends told me to leave her, but I just couldn't do it. Each time I saw her, I remembered the kind girl I had met and how I had affected her life negatively. I tried my best to support her, but I could only do so much. There's a limit to how many times I could help my struggling wife or handle the opinions of others. Eventually, I decided I had to make some big changes. I talked with my relatives, and we agreed it was time to take action. The first step was to start sharecropping. I sold off the animals, which I hated doing. Then, I ended my relationship with Angie. I took her back to her parents and left her there before I joined the army. In short, I ran away. I didn't disappear completely. Everyone knew I would be back. But I needed to learn some discipline. I knew how to work hard, but I hadn't truly grown up. They said the army would either help me become a better person or break me. I left my aunts to manage the farm, while I let my wife deal with her own challenges. I still couldn't bring myself to divorce Angie. Some might think I was foolish or weak. Maybe I just felt guilty about what I had done. Picture me feeling guilty, what an odd situation. I joined the army. I'm not sure how it is now, but when I signed up, they still had 4 kinds of enlisted men: the National Guard, enlisted reserves, draftees, and the regular army. When I joined, some older draftees were still around, having re-enlisted multiple times. I came in as a regular army member. At that time, we weren't at war. The first Iraq War had just ended, and our military was strong. Everyone thought we wouldn't get into more conflict. We seemed capable enough. I had options in the army. I scored well on tests, and some officers encouraged me to study foreign languages. I didn't see much need for that on a farm, so I chose to work in the motor pool. Having farm experience meant I understood machinery well. In the end, what I learned in the army wasn't much help. I already knew how to handle different kinds of machines, and dealing with tough weather is something most farmers don't think about. My time in the motor pool was helpful, though it would have been better without some younger officers acting superior. Anyone who has been there knows what I mean. I spent time traveling through Georgia, Texas, Kentucky, and Missouri, but I never left the country. I often worried about my aunts and went home whenever I could. I sent money to Angie's parents, never directly to her. Angie's dad eventually passed away, and I felt complicated emotions about it. Once I brought Angie back, he promised to protect her from me. That wasn't a big problem since I was away anyway, but I was glad he cared for her. Despite his feelings toward me, he genuinely loved his daughter and kept her safe during her pregnancy. A couple of months after I left for training, I heard that Angie was expecting a baby. Soon after, I received divorce papers, which I suspected her father encouraged her to file. I signed them and sent them back, keeping a copy for myself to share with fellow trainees who received similar news. I figured out the timing and thought the baby was probably mine, but her father was firm about not letting me see Angie or the baby when I was home on leave. I had to give him credit. He made sure Angie was well taken care of. The baby was a girl, and they named her Emily. Without ever seeing her, I knew I would love her. Who wouldn't love a girl named Emily? When I got back from service, I went straight to work. Sadly, 2 months after I returned, Aunt Olive passed away, and 4 months later, Aunt Maggie followed. It felt like they waited for me to return before they left. So here I was with a large farm, some savings, an ex-wife who ignored me, and a little girl I had never met. I had no real friends, only acquaintances, hired help, and relatives who envied me. Angie's father died from illness, leaving her mother alone. I couldn't help but feel a strange satisfaction thinking about his final days. Angie had been living on the small checks I had been sending. She moved in with a man who seemed not very good for her. I didn't like how much time she spent in his rundown house. One day I saw Angie at the local grocery store, and she had Emily with her. My family had a distinct look in their eyes, and I immediately recognized it in Emily. Even at 3 years old, it was clear. Emily was my child, living with a mother making choices I didn't agree with and a man who didn't seem right for the role. Angie likely knew Emily was mine, but she kept that quiet. Most people guessed, but no one wanted to confront Angie's boyfriend Bernard, a big man with a not-so-great past. Honestly, I had mixed feelings about Bernard. Sometimes I thought he could take care of her, yet I couldn't shake the guilt over how I had treated Angie. It turned out I still had feelings for her. Who am I kidding? I still loved her. I don't think I would have remarried her, but I didn't want her to keep getting hurt or be taken advantage of by others in town. All her old friends had left, and her new friends weren't real. I was particularly worried about Bernard being involved with my little girl. I thought that after returning from the army, if it meant I could see my daughter, I'd remarry Angie. Was I mistaken in my feelings? I knew I needed to act. Thankfully, Angie's mom cared about Emily, even if she didn't think much of me. Since I couldn't see Emily directly and Angie wouldn't allow it, I made an arrangement with Angie's mom. If Angie needed clothes, a doctor's visit, school supplies, or anything for a birthday or Christmas, I'd give the money to her mom. She would buy the things and give them to Angie. To prevent Angie or Bernard from selling any of the gifts, Angie's mom promised to give me all the receipts and cut the tags out of the clothes. If there were any parties, she would purchase the items, and I'd get the receipts for those too. I even bought her mom a simple camera. When Emily got new clothes or went out for occasions, Angie's mom took photos. She kept the pictures, but I got the film to develop my own. I stored everything in an old sea chest that belonged to Uncle Mitchell. I might never be close to my daughter, but I knew I was helping her, and I had my own little memory box filled with receipts, pictures, and even some of her hair. It wasn't much, but it was all I could do until she was old enough to learn the truth. If anyone saw her, they would surely be taken by her. She had light sandy-colored hair, big green eyes, and she loved to talk. I could see her from a distance often. I found where they went to church and joined, so I could catch glimpses of my daughter and Angie almost every week. It was also a way to stay connected with Angie's mom to check if they needed anything. Honestly, I didn't think Angie wanted to go to church anymore. Her parents had made her go as a child, but I suspect social services got involved. If she wanted to keep Emily, she had to act like a responsible mother. Knowing Emily would be spoiled with love if she were with me filled my heart. I loved her. I could see that Angie was holding on to old grudges. But I couldn't blame her. I had to stop sooner than I planned. I turned the heat up in the truck, but the woman was still shivering. I touched her forehead and found it was hot. I stopped at a 24-hour store and gathered some items. I got medicine and pain relief, blankets, baby receiving blankets, paper towels, rubbing alcohol, and some kinds of soap and shampoo. I even picked up one of those scrubby things people use for bathing. I don't know why I got them. I guess I was thinking of Emily a little. The woman had green eyes, just like my daughter's, which felt silly to me. Back at the truck, I checked on the woman again. Yes, her eyes were big and green. Her hair was dyed but had some roots showing. She seemed to be in her 30s or possibly 40s. Though not too old, I noticed a few signs of aging. Apart from her tattoos and cuts, her skin looked fine. I started to make her comfortable right there in the parking lot. I said, "Sit up." She did as I asked. "I have some medicine for you." I opened the bottle and poured a dose. She took it without issue. "Here, hold this." I handed her a receiving blanket. She took it quietly, looking expectant. I moved my hand quickly and she flinched, probably expecting something frightening. I paused and pulled out the fluffy blanket. "Can you sit up a little? I want to wrap this around you." She looked confused but followed my instruction. I noticed she had a nice face with long eyelashes. Despite everything, there was something nice about her. I wrapped the blanket around her as best as I could and gave her 2 pillows. Here, these should help. I walked back to my side of the truck. I felt the need to explain. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm not going to hurt you. I just wanted to see your reaction. She lay on her side and watched me. I asked, "Is your name Caprice?" She nodded. "Is that your real name?" "I think so. I don't remember." "How long have you been called Caprice?" "I don't know. A long time." "Do you have any questions for me?" She looked thoughtful and asked, "Do you want something from me?" I considered it and said, "No, I don't want anything like that. I'm here to help. I'm going to take you home and help you settle in. Then I'll figure out what to do next." She just stayed quiet. Then she asked, "Can I go back to sleep now?" "Yeah, that's fine." She looked at me. "If you want me to stay awake, I will." I could see she was feeling uncertain. "No, I want you to sleep." She laid back down and closed her eyes. I watched her for a moment. She opened her eyes a bit to see what I was doing. "Go to sleep," I said. She shut her eyes, and soon her breathing evened out, as anyone would in her situation. I drove home, focused on traffic and what needed to happen when we arrived. I also hoped to contact Dell. Dell is my nephew, and he is the only family member I truly respect. I trust my nephew Dell. Caden, my brother, often leaves me in charge of the farm when he is away. While he has other nieces and nephews, we have built a strong bond. My dad dislikes Caden and thinks he got the family farm unfairly. He believes Caden convinced our Aunt Margaret to give it to him. But I don't think that's true. Even though I may still seem young, I noticed who cared for our elderly family members in the end. It wasn't my dad, my other uncle, or my aunt. It was Caden all along, and I believe he deserves the farm. Caden treats his workers fairly, no matter their backgrounds, which my dad would not do. Many people around here pay some workers with checks while paying others in cash to avoid costs like unemployment insurance. They don't pay their workers fairly either. They claim they do, but I know that's not the case. I feel a little sorry for Uncle Caden. He once had a wife, but they divorced. I know his ex-wife, Angie, and she often talks negatively about him, but she seems to care too. Even if she says she dislikes him, she still asks about him, and I notice how she watches him when he's nearby. Caden also has a sweet little girl named Emily, but Angie does not let him see her. Emily is going to be very pretty as she grows up. While her mom may not be conventionally attractive, I think Emily will shine. I like Angie, but I don't think she is very attractive. It's sad that people tend to blame Caden for everything, especially since he has had some luck. They try to take advantage of Angie instead. Angie has her own battles. I believe Caden would help her if she let him. Honestly, if someone cared for her, I think she could look lovely. She often seems overwhelmed. Finally, I arrived home. After my drive, I took the long path to our house. I opened the front door, stepped inside, and then returned to the truck. I gently tapped a young girl on the face to wake her up. She opened her eyes, first showing a bit of surprise, then a hint of worry. I thought about what she might have gone through to make her react that way. I spoke softly. "We're at my house." She sat up slowly, looking around cautiously. I carefully lifted her. She felt lighter than I expected. I told her, "Wrap your arms around my neck," and she did. I carried her inside. My home is not a traditional farmhouse. It is somewhat unique. The front door opened into a wide foyer that led to a spacious living room. The living room featured a big picture window that I had added long ago. To the right was a hallway with 2 large bedrooms and a bathroom. To the left was a big dining room leading to a large kitchen. Just to my right was a broad staircase that went upstairs. The second floor had 2 additional bedrooms, each with a small bathroom. The master bedroom, which is downstairs to the right, has a big bathroom with a nice shower and an even larger bathtub. This is where I carried her. Holding her securely, I opened the bedroom door and gently placed her on the side of my king-sized bed. I pulled the blanket away, noting that she wore my blue shirt and shorts. "Let's get you settled," I told her. She avoided my gaze and looked down. If I had bad intentions, that was how I would expect her to act. I pulled back the bedding and helped her lie down fully. I adjusted the covers up to her neck, noticing her flinch slightly as I moved. It showed signs of her earlier discomfort. Her skin looked sensitive. She still appeared confused and worried. I wanted to comfort her. "Stay here and try to get some sleep. I need to check my phone messages. I'll be back soon." I wanted to help her feel better. The medicine seemed to be making her sleepy, but she still felt warm. I wanted to say something reassuring. "Will you stay here until I return?" She nodded. "Promise me you'll stay in bed." "I promise I'll stay in bed," she whispered. I smiled slightly and asked, "You won't try to leave?" She nodded again. "Say it." "I won't leave," she said. "Promise?" "I promise," she added. I smiled and got off the bed. I chuckled to myself as I reflected on the situation. I glanced back at her. "I won't be long." Her eyes were already closed, but she opened them again to say, "I'll be good." I wondered what that meant. A promise to be good from someone like her made me curious. I left the bedroom. As I walked out, I couldn't help but think about what she was feeling. I was left wondering if she was even thinking at all. Caprice wondered, how did I end up here? I'm in this man's home, in his bed. I don't even know what day it is or if it's even the right month. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. My head aches more than my body. Since Vince bought me around Christmas, I remember having to wear a bright red dress at his first party. I can still hear the laughter from that night, and I hated it deeply. But what could I do? I should stop thinking like this. Having thoughts isn't wise in my situation. The only things Vince let me use were a little marijuana and a lot of ecstasy. I think about other substances, but surprisingly, I've managed to adapt to the ecstasy. I think I would feel better if I had something else. Vince gave me something similar to a sedative, too, saying I wasn't worth more than that. This guy seems to be following the same pattern as the others. They always start the same way. They think they can make me like them. At first, they are nice until the rules come out. I noticed his hand gesture. It looked like he was annoyed. Some people like to be in charge of others, especially in my situation. The rules never change. I think back to my first experience. I believe he was kind. I may have cared for him. I can't even remember his name now. It's been so long and so much has happened that I can hardly recall. I know I got upset with my family and left. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't think about it much. This guy is good-looking. They usually are. Except for Vince. Most have similar gentle eyes. This one has brown eyes. I don't think I'll like him. Vince said he would hurt me if I didn't follow the rules last night. Or maybe it was the night before. I remember something about a bag. I wonder where I am, who this new person is, and when things might take a bad turn. I'm just so tired. I'm always afraid. I talk things over with Delbert. I left the bedroom and went to the big open kitchen where I have a poker table in the corner. That's where I keep my laptop and a phone. I have a farm to manage, partners to connect with, and I have my daughter and my ex-wife to think about. My oldest brother has a son named Delbert, and everyone calls him Del. He is about the only relative I like. He runs the farm when I'm not around. Even though he's only 19, I trust him. He's a fine young man, a testament to the woman my brother married. I checked the computer. No messages, which was good. I checked the landline. It's mostly used by Del or by Angie's mother, Mrs. Bradford. Del had left a message. "Caden Del here. I saw Angie. She has another black eye. Seems Bernard caught her at the wagon wheel. You might want to check on her." There was also a message from Angie's mother. I figured it was about the same thing. "Caden, Bernard caught Angie with Brad Armstrong. He hurt her. Emily saw it all. Angie and Emily are back with me for now." I thought that I better call Del and see if he can come over for a while. I took my cell and dialed Del's number. Del's a good kid. He always answers if he can. "Hello? Is that you, Caden?" "Yeah, Del. Can you come over for a little while?" "Sure. Are you going to check on your ex?" "Got no choice. I've been busy. I already did the chickens and mucked out the stables." "Be right there." Well, I thought, what a way to start a new week. I better get back and check on her. I went back to my bedroom. She was sound asleep. I sat down in a chair and watched her. She had green eyes, hair dyed dark with hints of red underneath. It was hard to tell if it was curly or wavy. It looked nice and thick. On closer look, I decided she didn't look like much, even though she might have been attractive once. What a shame. Maybe I could help her find a job. She could work at one of the vegetable stands. I couldn't trust her with money. It was best to help her get back on her feet and send her on her way. I heard the front door. "Back here, Dell." Dell made his way to the big bedroom. He looked in. "Wow, who's that?" I guess I was a bit embarrassed. "Just someone I helped out. I was in a card game and they were going to hurt her. I helped her." "How much was she?" Dell asked. "Several thousand." "You like her then?" "She's not who I think she is. They were suffocating her. I helped her, but I guess I'll help her get back on her feet." Dell changed the subject. "You going to check on Angie?" "Got no choice. Can you keep an eye on this one while I'm gone?" "Sure, what's her name?" I shrugged. "Who knows? She goes by Caprice right now." Dell looked her over. "Caprice, pretty name." I gave Dell my best teasing look. "They all have pretty names. Look, I'll try not to be too long." Dell smiled. "Take your time. What do I do if she wakes up?" "Nothing, just let her rest. Tell her I'll be back soon." I got up, grabbed my jacket, and started for the front door. I got in my truck and drove away. If Angie was at her mother's, I'd probably get a chance to see my daughter. I tried not to think about her too much. It only reminded me how complicated my life had become. I wondered if it was ever simple. I took the back road, turned at the fork, caught sight of the house, and pulled in the drive. It wasn't a bad house, considering the 1960s a small brick ranch. Angie had grown up there. I had caught up with her just out of high school. She was easy to get to, and considering how innocent she was back then, it was easy to be around her. I wished now I'd treated her better. I wished I hadn't introduced her to drinking. Back then, she truly cared for me. In the beginning, she would do anything I asked. I remembered pushing her to do things that made her uncomfortable, and I regretted it. I had acted without thinking. Why did I only feel guilty about her? That's something I learned in the Army. People could talk about relationships generally, but a real person never got into specifics. When I talked about the past, I regretted every detail. I wished I had kept quiet. Now, when people look at me, they remember the unkind things I said and did. I felt guilty all the time. Going to church didn't help either. I worried about what I would say to Emily when she finds out I'm her dad and learns about my past. I got out of my truck and walked to the door. I was really getting tired. I had been up all night. I knocked on the door. My daughter opened it. She was beautiful. Emily looked at me with wide eyes. She knew my name. Her mom had told her to always stay away from me. Her mom said I was unkind. I saw that Emily was scared, and I always seemed to frighten her. I thought it was my fault. She's my responsibility, so how could I not be concerned about her? I think my way of looking at her might frighten her. She's about 5 now and just started kindergarten. Some older kids tease her, and I imagine she wishes I wasn't who they claim I am. I never meant to frighten her. It just happens. I asked, "Hi, Emily, is your mom home?" She nodded. I continued, "Could I talk to her?" Emily ran inside the house. Moments later, Angie appeared at the door. I noticed she didn't look well. Since her father passed away, no one had really been there for her, and if anyone needed support, it was Angie. It bothered me because I knew I should be the one to help her. "Bernard really hurt you." "I heard about it," I said. Angie frowned when she saw me. "What do you want?" she asked. "That eye looks bad. You should get it checked." "I can't afford it." I knew the pattern. Every time Angie or Emily needed help, it was Angie's mom who paid, and I would settle it later. "Your mom has money, and you could be risking something serious with that injury." "Oh, so now you're a doctor?" "Angie, please have your mom take you to see someone. It looks serious." She shook her head. "Not right now. It's the end of the month." I thought about that. She might not have received her support yet. "Is your mom home?" "Who wants to know?" "Come on, Angie, can I speak with her?" Angie gave me a hard look. "Wait here!" And she went back inside. A minute later, Angie's mom appeared at the door. I quietly handed her some cash. "Take her to the hospital." Her mom asked, "Are you sure?" "What do you mean sure? You know how I feel." "How's Emily?" Her mom replied, "You got her report card. She had a little cough, but it's better now. She'll need an Easter dress." I remembered. I had been distracted with other things. I hadn't planned on it, but there was a game to prepare for. My thoughts turned to Angie and Emily. A familiar feeling settled in my chest. Whenever I thought of them, that feeling returned. I told her, "You know what to do. Get them both something nice. I'd like to see them at church." I added softly, "Get yourself something nice, too." Angie's mom nodded. "I'll take care of it." Then I asked, "Will Angie leave Bernard?" "She's scared to be away from him too long, and she won't accept my help. She says she's upset with you. You believe her?" "She's not well, Caden." I stood up, the conversation done. "Do you need anything else? Are the bills all paid?" Angie's mom smiled faintly. "We're caught up." I stepped back toward my truck. "Okay, let me know if anything comes up." She had already gone back inside. I climbed into the truck. I figured I better get back to Caprice before she worried Dell. Back in Pennsylvania, the discussion continued. Vince looked at his partner, Jared. "Did we get a location on our card player?" Jared shook his head. "No, we lost track. He drove out of our signal range." Vince seemed unconcerned. "Doesn't matter, he'll show up again." Jared asked, "Still thinking about that woman?" Vince chuckled. "Not really, but the card player might be useful." "Always looking for the next move," Jared said. "Always," Vince replied. Caprice meets Dell. Back at the farmhouse, Caprice slowly opened her eyes. She saw a young man sitting by the bed watching her with a friendly look. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice weak. "I'm Caden's nephew," he smiled. "Who's Caden?" "He's the one who brought you here." Caprice tested him. "So he's my caretaker?" Dell shook his head, still smiling. "Uncle Caden? No way. He's a farmer, just like me. He told me about you, but you don't have to worry here." She tried to shift, but felt pain. She reached up and noticed a loose rope around her neck. Dell noticed. "I'm just here to make sure you're okay. Want some coffee?" Caprice looked uncertain. "No thanks. I'm all right." Dell stood up. "Mind if I make some for myself?" She blinked in confusion. "No, go ahead." He left the room to go to the kitchen. He wasn't sure what Caden's plans were for her, but it was clear she wasn't going anywhere for now. Caden returned soon after, and Dell gave him space. Later at the house, I got home and parked the truck feeling completely worn out. I'd been gone the whole day before and most of the night. Poker, the long drive, then checking on my ex-wife's family. I needed rest, but first, I wanted to check on Caprice. She was still lying down but looked more alert. I sat on the edge of the bed and gently touched her forehead, still warm. I gave her cheek a soft tap. "Hello." Her eyes fluttered open. She tried to sit up. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Not yet. You've been through a lot. I want to get you cleaned up and comfortable." Leaving her under the covers, I walked to the bathroom and started filling the tub with warm water. When I came back, she appeared more awake. "I'm going to help you into the tub," I said. I removed the rope from around her neck and set it aside. Gently, I helped her sit up and lifted her into my arms. Carefully, I carried her to the bathroom. "Hope the water's okay," I said, lowering her into the tub. She let out a quiet breath as the warmth touched her skin. "Not too hot?" I asked. She shook her head. I could see she was still uneasy. I smiled softly, hoping to make her feel better. "It's okay. You're safe here." I picked up the shampoo and carefully started to wash her hair, being careful not to get any soap in her eyes. Her hair, though a bit tangled at the ends, still felt soft. I rinsed it gently and repeated the process. I used a soft cloth to clean her face and neck, keeping my touch gentle and respectful. She had clearly gone through a hard time, and this was the least I could do. We didn't speak. She looked weary, but she didn't pull away. When I finished, I helped her up, wrapped her in a towel, and guided her back to the bedroom for some rest. She stole a quick glance at me, a cautious look that said she was unsure of how things would go. She said, "I'm surprised no one ever made me change how I looked." I asked, "You mean, pressured you?" She nodded. "Some thought I should, but I found ways to avoid it. I guess I often made others feel at ease. They told me I looked friendly." "You were like a warm-up act?" I inquired. She nodded again. "Kind of. When I was younger, people found me relatable. It helped in a way." There was a hint of sadness in her eyes. I used to be someone people respected, but then I felt left behind, and when I didn't fit their idea anymore, I lost my place. I listened quietly, letting her express what was on her mind. After a while, she continued, no one thought it was worth it to invest in me, so I became easy to overlook. I wanted to comfort her, taking care of her injuries as I spoke. Tell me more. She sighed softly. I stopped keeping count. Everything just started to blur together. Were there times you were treated kindly? Not really. Some tried to be gentle, but it was often just a way to get what they wanted. As I grew older, it got harder to pretend. Eventually, I just became quiet. How old are you now? I asked. She didn't respond and instead changed the topic. Your nephew said you're a farmer. That's right. You're not like the others? No. So what are you then? Just someone trying to help? I nodded. You could say that. She looked closely at me. I've spent a long time trying to protect myself. Sometimes that meant not being honest. But you helped me last night. So, I will be honest this time. If I stay, I don't know how I will act. I've been just trying to survive for so long. I remained quiet and said, You've faced a lot. Let me help you heal, all right? She gave me a small smile. You're different. I'll put some ointment on your bruises. Is that okay? She nodded. I helped her up slowly. She winced a bit, but managed to stand with my support. I carefully dried her off and started treating the more serious bruises with antiseptic. You have some marks on your skin, I remarked softly, gently touching a spot. They are mine, she said in a low voice, and I chose them. I nodded. Some of them are nice, but if you ever want to remove any, I can help with that. She looked surprised. Why would you offer that? I shrugged. In case you want a fresh start. She went quiet again, then said, You don't understand. I know I probably don't, I replied gently. There was a pause before she said, You helped me. I appreciate it. But if you're wise, you'll help me get clothes and let me go. I nodded. Maybe. But for now, you need to heal. One step at a time. She remained still while I applied ointment to some visible cuts. You'll be okay, I said, trying to reassure her. She whispered, I'm trying to believe that. She sat down carefully and took a deep breath. Thank you, she said softly, for treating me like a person. I gently removed the item from her mouth and placed it aside. I then lightly held her nose for a moment and said, Let's keep things simple from now on. She moved her jaw slightly to adjust. I noticed then that she had a delicate face, more than I had realized. She picked up on my change in expression, and her mood shifted. She started to warn me again. Caden, I interrupted softly. You're safe now. She looked away. I don't think I should stay here. I might not be good for you. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up a brush. Let's get your hair untangled. I started brushing it gently. It had some gray strands, but not as many as I had thought. Maybe a rinse later. How about a shortcut? Like a pageboy cut, do you remember those? She gave a resigned smile. It's your choice. I chuckled softly. Thanks for trusting me. I helped her to her feet and handed her some clean clothes, a green shirt, and a pair of shorts. Green matches your eyes. She was still stiff, so I assisted her while she put them on. You should lie down for a bit. I'm going to take a quick shower. Please don't wander off, it's easy to get lost here. She climbed back onto the bed and lay down. I looked back at her. You'll stay put? She nodded. Okay. I smiled and went into the bathroom. As the water ran, I stayed alert. I had left my wallet and keys near the bed, and I knew she might try to take them. A minute passed. I heard her moving. Before getting under the water, I quietly stepped out through the side window, went around the house, and waited near the truck. Sure enough, she came out holding my wallet and keys. I leaned against the truck. Going somewhere? She froze. You promised, I said gently, walking over to her. I took the items from her hands and placed them back inside the truck. Then I motioned for her to come with me. We walked to the garage. Inside, I pointed to some supplies by the workbench. It looks a bit intense, but it's just storage, I said, noticing her nervous look as she stared at a tool on the bench. Are you okay? I asked. Are you going to hurt me? She asked quietly. I followed her gaze and said firmly, No, I'm not like that. She hesitated and said, I've seen terrible things. I didn't know what to expect. I understand, I replied. Let's go back inside. I gently took her by the wrist and led her back to the bedroom. Can I see your hands? I asked. She held them out. I picked up a soft piece of cloth and loosely wrapped it around her wrists. Just for now, we'll sort everything out soon. You need to rest. She looked at me and said, This won't keep me here forever. Maybe not, I replied, but it's just to keep things calm. She didn't say anything. I went to take a shower. The water was cold, but it didn't bother me. When I came back, I changed into a clean shirt and lay down on the other side of the bed. She was quiet, facing away from me, then softly said, I think you're making a mistake. Maybe. We'll see, I replied calmly, closing my eyes. Caprice didn't sleep much. I could tell she was still tense. A nap helped a little, but when I woke, the sky outside was orange, and I had a slight headache. I heard her moving behind me. Getting anywhere? I asked. She looked uncomfortable, her wrists a bit red from the cloth. I noticed she probably needed water, food, and a trip to the bathroom. I stood up. Let's get you refreshed, get some food, and take it from there. She was in a tough spot, looking worn and drained. It was clear she needed help. She urgently said, Please, I really need to go. I moved aside to give her room, and she quickly took care of her needs. I followed her into the bathroom. Caprice sat there, her hands still tied, looking anxious and perhaps reminded of tough times. I went over and loosened her bindings, apologizing. I should have been more thoughtful. Her eyes showed surprise, as if she expected a different response. You don't understand. I'm in a tough situation. It would have been easier if I were left alone. At first, I could see why she might think that, but I replied, I disagree with that. As she composed herself, she said, What do you know? You're just someone I don't know. If you were wise, you'd just let me leave. I paused, sensing something deeper. You must be hungry. Her frustration grew. Can't you see my situation? How about I make some scrambled eggs? They're simple and tasty, I suggested, knowing she needed nourishment. She winced but replied, I could eat some eggs. I helped her to the kitchen, where she looked around cautiously. I noticed her uneasy glances, as if considering her choices. While I prepared the food, I mentioned, If you're looking for anything, that's my laptop over there, and most of my belongings are secure. If you need money, there's a cash box in the closet. She seemed flustered, and I could tell she was struggling inside. Listen, calling someone from your past won't lead you to good things, I said directly. Do you want to go back to that life? She stammered, No. Then what do you want? I asked gently. You're more than you think. As the eggs cooked, I took a moment to observe her. You're using a fork to eat, I noted. Not everyone does that. It shows you still care, despite everything you've been through. Caprice reacted defensively. Why do you care? I stood up and gently took her wrist, leading her to a mirror. Look at yourself, I urged, hoping she would see more than her past. At first she resisted, but I encouraged her to face her reflection. Who do you see? I asked. She couldn't look past her self-doubt. I just see an empty person, she replied, trying to turn away. I pressed on. But who are you beyond that? Look deeper, see what I see. Reluctantly, she met my gaze. I see no one of value. But you are here, alive right now, I said. I want you to see that you matter. I care, I added. And maybe I could be cared for too. I looked at Caprice in the mirror. You've been through a lot, but you are more than how the world has treated you. You deserve respect. She looked at me, a mix of confusion and caution in her eyes. I could tell she wasn't used to hearing such words. Then she gave a strange laugh, trying to brush it off. You almost convinced me for a moment, she said with a forced smile. But you're just a farmer. I smiled back and said, You know what I'm going to do? She looked a bit nervous. What? I'm going to help you get better. Whatever has been broken, I'll help fix. Your health, your smile, your sense of self. You have a future that's still open. Maybe we can shape it together." She let out another awkward laugh. "You're still a strange one." "I might have said too much," I admitted. "But I'm not giving up on you. You may not know who you are yet, but we will figure that out together." She looked down, uncertain. "I might run." "You won't," I said gently, smiling as I took her wrists, not harshly. "Come on, you need some rest." She paused before asking, "Why are you helping me?" "You need someone to treat you like a person," I replied. "Right now, I'm just checking to make sure you're okay." I took her back to the bedroom and asked her to lie down so I could put more ointment on her healing spots. She stayed still while I worked. Her face showed tension, but she didn't pull away. When I was done, I helped her sit up and gave her a notepad. "Let's figure out what clothes you need. I'll get you something clean and comfy." We spent some time discussing her clothing sizes. It was a calm and straightforward conversation. She didn't say much, but answered my questions. After we finished, I noticed the time. "The stores are closed for the night, but I'll get what you need tomorrow." She remained on the bed while I stepped into the kitchen to make a call. A visit with Mr. Ellis. Mr. Ed Ellis was like family. His mother had saved my life when I was a baby, and over the years, his home had felt like mine. I called him. "Hello, Mr. Ellis?" His voice came through. "It's Caden. I could use some help," I said. We talked for about 10 minutes. I explained the situation, and we figured out a way to make sure Caprice felt safe and was nearby until she was ready to make her own choices. After we finished, I put on a jacket and headed out. An hour and a half later, I returned with some basic supplies, nothing extravagant, just what was needed to organize the room and create a sense of order while I took care of other tasks. I walked into the bedroom. She was still lying where I had left her, looking tired and emotionally exhausted. "Evening," I greeted gently. She looked up with little expression. "I need to use the bathroom." I loosened the soft cloth restraints I had left and guided her to the bathroom. I had already set out some basic toiletries, a toothbrush, a small bottle of mouthwash, and a hairbrush. She took her time, refreshed herself, and returned to the bedroom. I didn't say much. I set the supplies down and motioned for her to sit. "I just want to make sure you're comfortable and don't feel like you need to look over your shoulder," I said. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't push her. I gave her the space she needed. She held out her hands. I fastened her wrists together lightly, then secured them to the bed frame. "There you go," I said as I got up to leave. She started to cry again, her voice shaking. "You can't do this to me." I turned and asked, "Who am I doing this to?" She stopped crying, confusion on her face. Am I just being treated harshly, or am I dealing with a person who has feelings too? Caprice heard what I said. She turned away from me, muttering something unkind. I left the master bedroom and walked down the hall to a smaller bedroom. That comment lingered in my thoughts and reminded me of things I had never fully understood about my family. I thought about my father's second wife, whom my aunt had disapproved of. She had passed away in a difficult situation, and my older sister had once shared stories of the challenges we faced. I entered the smaller bedroom, set the clock, and knelt by the bed to say my prayers. The details didn't matter. Didn't everyone pray for similar wishes? Climbing into bed, I thought about my choices. I needed to decide my next steps. Maybe I could help her find herself again. If it worked, she would become whole again. If not, she would move on. An old saying came to mind. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can always try to encourage him. I got back up and began to pray earnestly, including everyone in my thoughts, even her. Part 2. I woke up early the next morning. I quietly entered the master bedroom and saw Caprice was still asleep, probably from the medication. I gently tapped her shoulder. "Hey, sleepyhead." She turned over and gave me a sleepy smile. "Oh, you." I smiled back as I unfastened the locks that held her in bed. "You have a busy day ahead, so let's get moving." She sat up and stretched slowly. The marks from her earlier struggles were still visible, and she looked at me, uncertain. "What are we doing today?" I met her gaze with a warm smile. "I know someone who has clothes for you, and you'll also be getting your hair done. A friend will stay with you most of the day." "You mean a guard," she said, unimpressed. I can't leave you alone, but I can't leave you restrained all day. I get to go out? You'll have the whole house to yourself. She smiled brightly. Wow. Just then, there was a knock on the door. That's her now? I opened the front door to a young woman. Caprice, meet Aurora. Aurora, this is Caprice. Caprice smiled and extended her hand. Hi. She seemed to understand the situation well. Aurora greeted her and looked around. Breakfast? I had my coat on. Not for me. Caprice nodded. Maybe just a piece of toast. Aurora moved to the toaster. I stepped out the front door. I felt somewhat like an outsider in this home. Deciding to relax for the morning, I waited until 10 a.m. to take another bath. Soaking was nice, and I planned to apply more ointment afterward. Aurora told me not to get my hair wet, saying it would be better for a stylist to work on unwashed hair. I was surprised by this, but didn't argue. After my bath, I dried off, and Aurora helped me with some ointment. She noticed my marks and asked, You have quite a few cuts. What happened? I gave her a thoughtful look, realizing she might not fully understand my situation. I think Caden told you about my past. Aurora nodded, aware that my life had been difficult. It sounds like you've been through a lot. I've heard there are places where things are a bit easier for women. I saw this as a chance to connect more. Caden helped me when I really needed it. They had me trapped, and I couldn't breathe. Then Caden came to my rescue. That moment stayed with me, Caden, the one who stepped in. Maybe we shared some common ground. Aurora gently held my hands. It was good that he was there. Caden's a good man. I like him. After a pause, she added with a small smile, Most people around here like Caden, he just doesn't see it. I raised an eyebrow. Why wouldn't he? She didn't answer directly. I need to change the sheets and do some laundry. I sensed something unsaid in her voice, so I asked, Are you and Caden close? Aurora had started to walk toward the bedroom, but paused. She turned back to me. Watch where you step. Ever heard of a rip current? I shook my head. It looks calm on the surface, but it can pull you in before you know it. Some things aren't meant to be stirred up. That spoke volumes. There was something between them, or at least there could be. How old is Caden? I asked. He's 30, Aurora replied, standing firm. I'm 23. I'm married, but if Caden ever wanted to, well, he doesn't, and my husband knows that. What would your husband do if he did? It would hurt him, she said softly, but we all respect Caden. Even my husband, that means something. You all think highly of him. We do. He's helped my family countless times. He's been part of my life forever. What about race? I asked, hesitantly. Aurora looked at me curiously. That's not an issue for Caden. Not at all. She stepped a bit closer. There are people who say one thing but act differently. Caden is genuine. That's what really matters. Her words made me pause and think. Aurora turned back toward the hallway. I'll finish the bed and laundry. Maybe later you can tell me more about your story. Around midday, we sat down for a simple lunch. Aurora had made sandwiches with tuna, tomato, and lettuce. I decided to ask more about the man whose home I was in. How long have you known Caden? All my life, she replied easily. What kind of person is he? He's dependable. He works hard. He cares about others. He even helped pay for my college. That surprised me. He did? Aurora nodded. There's more to him than you think. I tried to change the subject. You know who I am? She looked at me steadily. I know enough. I also know you'll probably try to convince me to let you go. But that's not happening. Caden feels like family. He's helped my family, and we look out for him. Sounds like he's done a lot for you. He has, she said. He's helped with tuition, kept us employed, and ensured his aunts were taken care of. It goes both ways. We've supported his family as well. I was curious. You don't speak like I expected. Aurora smiled. I can speak how I need to. Most of us can adapt. I tried a different question. Caden was married once, right? At that, her expression turned serious. That's not my concern, and if you're smart, you won't make it yours either. Her response told me everything I needed. I wasn't sure I could fully believe the picture she painted of him, too generous, too perfect. I wondered if it was all just a facade. I'd met people like that before, showing kindness only until they wanted something in return. Still, something about this place felt different. Maybe that was what unsettled me the most. Caden had a busy day. My day was full. I first went to the beauty salon to check on my earlier request for hair care help. Then I met my friend, the local doctor, Silas Dean. He agreed to check on Caprice's general health and see that her injuries were healing well. After that, I booked a dentist appointment. I also visited a clinic in Georgetown to learn about tattoo removal options. Finally, I went to the Gold Coast Mall. There, I picked out different clothes, shoes, dresses, skirts, tops, pajamas, and more. I wanted to ensure she had what she needed to start over. I even got a pair of light brown jeans and a couple of button-down shirts. I didn't really shop around. I just selected what seemed practical and gave the salesperson the sizes. I wanted her to have decent clothes, nothing too fancy, but better than the bare minimum. Part of me hoped she'd see it as a fresh start, even if I didn't fully understand her yet. As I shopped, my thoughts wandered to Emily, my little girl, the one I felt I couldn't reach. Sometimes I questioned why I was doing all this. Was I helping someone in need, or was I trying to fill a void left by the past? Maybe Caprice had become a symbol of things I hadn't dealt with, things I'd lost. I pushed those thoughts aside. Maybe I was just trying to help someone who needed it. And maybe, if I was fortunate, it could help me too. I hoped that Angie's mother had managed to get my ex-wife to buy Emily something nice for Easter. I was tired of seeing them struggle. I let the thought go. Bringing home the clothes, Caprice looked doubtful at the bags I carried into the house. She probably thought I was out of touch, like just a few changes of clothes would be enough. I could almost guess what she was thinking. Maybe she believed I was trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed, that I didn't understand what she had been through. She looked at me and asked with a light laugh, "You bought all this for me?" "Yeah," I said. "Take it back to the bedroom. Hang it in the closet or put it in the drawers. Pick something you like and change into it." While Caprice was in the bedroom, I went upstairs to my study. One of the rooms up there was a small office. I had an older desktop computer, a printer, and several filing cabinets filled with farm records. I liked things to be organized. I kept physical copies of everything, even though most of it was saved digitally now. It helped me feel at ease. In the closet, there was a safe where I kept my most important documents, titles, equipment keys, financial records, and personal files. Easter Sunday was coming up, and I had made plans for Emily. She had recently started taking riding lessons, which I had helped pay for without anyone knowing. I wasn't sure if Angie suspected who had funded it, but that didn't matter. Inside the safe, I found the documents, the bill of sale for a small brown pony and prepaid receipts for its care over the next 6 months at Mr. Ellis's farm. I looked everything over, printed a clean copy, and placed the papers into a large envelope. I had arranged for a farmer in Virginia to bring the pony up and tie it to the fence at Angie's mom's place on Easter morning while they were at church. My friend Dell had agreed to hide nearby and capture the moment when Emily saw the pony. I wouldn't be there, but I wanted to share the experience in some way. I had a special place to keep those pictures, an old sea chest that belonged to my Uncle Mitchell. It sat at the foot of a wall in my upstairs study, holding everything that connected to Angie and Emily since I returned from the service. There were 2 keys, one on my keychain, and the other hanging on a nail above the bedroom door. Sometimes late at night, when the house was quiet, I would open the chest and look through it, photos, cards, notes. It helped me feel close to Emily, even though I knew I might never be part of her life in the way I wanted. As for Angie, well, there were memories, a few good ones. A time, brief as it was, when we shared something real. I didn't expect her forgiveness, but I always cared. I knew I had made many mistakes, and I had paid for them. Now, just thinking about her made me reflect not with bitterness, but with a quiet sadness. Life hadn't turned out the way I planned, but that didn't mean I had to stop trying to do right by someone, even if that someone was a stranger needing a second chance. I never cheated, but she became suspicious, and soon things started to fall apart. Honestly, as I look back, I had better experiences, but I didn't marry her for just that. She was such a lively person, always cheerful, always eager to make things good, at least in the beginning. I don't know exactly where things went wrong, but when they did, they went badly. Sure, I was challenging for a long time. I had my flaws, but I tried to improve. It felt like the more I changed, the more she changed too. I had plans to take some paperwork over to Angie's mom's this afternoon. I figured I wouldn't see Angie or Emily, since it was one of the days my little girl had dance lessons. The lessons were another thing I managed to arrange for Emily without Angie knowing where the money came from. I took another look at Caprice. Caprice stepped out from the bedroom and asked, "How do I look?" I was surprised. The woman I brought home the other morning had changed so much. There were still reminders of her past struggles, but the outfit she wore brightened her whole demeanor. Yes, I thought, a lovely change, but she's no Liza Doolittle. The blouse was a soft green. I chose it because I thought it would match her eyes. I was right. They matched perfectly. The blouse had 3/4 sleeves with a crisp collar. She left the top buttons undone, which added a nice touch while still looking modest. The skirt was a rich dark green, a comfortable pleated plaid style that ended just above her knees. The way it flared out from her small waist gave her a graceful appearance. The hairdresser I hired finished just before I arrived. Her hair had been readied to what I hoped was her natural color, a light brown with hints of red. She cut it short, but Caprice had enough length to tie it back in a lovely ponytail. Her expression showed she knew how great she looked. She smiled and spun around happily. Each spin made the hem of her skirt flutter gently. I was amazed. "Caprice, you're beautiful." To my surprise, she ran up to me, wrapped her arms around my neck, and gave me a light kiss on my cheek. "You like?" she asked with a smile. Her excitement was contagious. "Very much," I replied awkwardly. Then I said something I didn't think through. "I have to take some papers over to an acquaintance. Would you like to come with me?" She stood on her tiptoes, making her just a bit taller than me, and replied, "I'd love it." Just like that, I let my impulses lead me. I hadn't behaved this way in a long time. Caprice and I got into my pickup truck and drove over to Angie's mom's place. As expected, Angie had found a ride and taken little Emily to her dance class. I left Caprice in the truck while I went to the door to talk. I figured there wasn't much chance of her leaving. I kept the keys and she still didn't know where she was. I knocked on the door and Grandma answered it. She looked a bit tired but smiled carefully. "Good afternoon, Caden. I got outfits for Angie, Emily, and myself for Easter," she said as she handed me the receipts. She wasted no time. I replied, "That's wonderful. I have the details about the pony and where he'll stay after Sunday. He's at Mr. Ellis's place. The pony's name is Johnny. He's gentle and friendly. He enjoys carrots." I paused and asked, "Have you had any issues with Angie about where the money's coming from?" Grandma said, "No, she thinks it's from someone else. You and I both know if she thought it was from you, she wouldn't accept it." "She still feels that way?" "I get it, but she and I have a child together. Even if Angie doesn't want to admit it, I'm Emily's dad, and everyone else knows it too. I know we probably won't be together again. That used to bother me, and it still does sometimes. I wish I had the chance to make things right with Angie. I could be a good partner for her. I guess I shouldn't have left to join the army, but I felt overwhelmed back then. It seemed like everyone was making fun of me. It's frustrating. Now that I'm ready, she doesn't see it." Grandma looked out at the truck. "Do you have a girlfriend, Caden?" "No," I replied. "She's just someone I met and have been helping a bit." Grandma glanced at the clock on the wall. After looking back at the truck, she said, "Why don't you and your friend come inside for a few minutes? Angie won't be back with Emily for a couple of hours. I'd like to meet her and talk about my concerns regarding Angie." I felt a bit trapped. I wanted to hear what she had to say, but letting Caprice in could mean sharing more than I wanted. But would it matter if Caprice knew about my child and ex-wife? She likely wouldn't be around long anyway. I said, "Sure. Please make some coffee while I get my friend." Mrs. Bradford went to the kitchen. I walked back to the truck. Outside by the truck, I turned to Caprice. "We're invited in. Just be polite. Only say what's needed." She looked surprised. Maybe she didn't expect someone like me to invite her to meet family. She quietly replied, "I'd like that." I opened the truck door and helped her out. She had a small change in her expression, maybe gratitude or maybe confusion. Kindness might not often come her way. For me, it was simple. I did it because it felt right, not to impress anyone. We walked up to the front door together. I held it open for her, and she hesitated just a moment before walking in. I could see she wasn't used to being treated nicely. I wasn't always this way, but I had tried to improve myself in recent years. Something about her made me want to be patient. I hoped she would start to believe she deserved kindness. Inside, Mrs. Bradford had set out 3 coffee cups and plates. There was a fresh apple pie on the table. "I baked this for Emily," she said while pouring coffee. "Apple is her favorite. She won't mind if we each have a piece." Then she looked at Caprice. "If you'd rather have lemonade, I have some." "Coffee's fine," Caprice said softly. I sat down and watched the cozy scene unfold. After a moment, I turned to Mrs. Bradford. "What's happening with Angie that I might not know?" She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "You know she's still with Bernard." I nodded slightly. Caprice listened closely from across the table. Mrs. Bradford added, "He's been having some problems lately. I haven't seen her getting involved, but if he keeps it up, it might not be long before she does." I stayed quiet. I was worried, but I felt powerless. I knew Angie had her struggles. I just didn't know how to reach her anymore. Mrs. Bradford looked at me seriously. "You might not be able to talk sense into her, but maybe someone else can. Do you think I should get them involved?" "If it could help. What matters most is Emily. If Angie realizes she could lose her daughter, maybe it'll make her see things differently." I glanced at Caprice. She had learned more in a few minutes than I intended to share. She looked at me gently. "I didn't know you had a daughter." Mrs. Bradford turned to her with surprise, then back at me. "She doesn't know?" I sighed. "You might as well tell her." Mrs. Bradford took a small bite of pie and began. "Caden married my daughter right after high school. She was young and not ready for what came next. Things became difficult. He left to join the service. While he was away, she had his child." She pointed to a photo on the wall. "That's Emily, their daughter. The one good thing that came from all that." She turned back to me. "Angie has never stopped caring for you, but she won't let you close. She's hurt and angry. Now she's caught between staying here and going back to someone who isn't right for her." Caprice glanced at the photo. "She looks a bit like me." My voice rose slightly. "She's not like you, not at all." Mrs. Bradford noticed the exchange and sensed there was more to it, but she stayed focused on the conversation. "Caden, you still have a chance to do something. Help Angie get out of her tough situation. Guide her to a job and a better place. People still listen to you." Caprice was quiet, but I could see she noticed how similar we looked. Maybe she was curious about what part I thought she should play. Was she here by chance, or did I see her as someone who could fill a space left by another? Honestly, I wondered the same thing. If she believed it even slightly, she might see it as a lucky opportunity. All she had to do was act like my pretend girlfriend, and she could gain a lot. Many people live in dreams. This one seemed perfect for her. Caprice acted as if she felt sorry. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to suggest that the innocent girl was like me. I was just saying what I thought." She tried to seem genuine, but I could tell it wasn't convincing. She added, "You should consider what Mrs. Bradford said. If Angie gets into trouble, things will be harder for everyone." I shifted in my seat, uncomfortable with her words. I must have shown my feelings. "You know about that?" Her answer struck a chord. "Yes, I do." I looked at Angie's mom. "Thank you for the pie and coffee." I stood up and reached for Caprice. "We're leaving now." I smiled at Mrs. Bradford, but it didn't feel real. "I'll think about your advice." I gently helped Caprice to her feet. "Let's go." Caprice stood up. "Thanks for everything, Mrs. Bradford. I hope we meet again." I decided to take Caprice shopping, which felt silly. I drove along the coastal highway, not out of kindness, but because I noticed Caprice had no jewelry, not even a watch. She sat quietly next to me, which I appreciated. I felt bad for bringing her along, especially after she came inside with me. Finally, Caprice remarked, "This doesn't look like the way we came." I kept my eyes on the road. "No, it's not." She asked, "Are you trying to get rid of me?" I looked at her. "No, but you can leave if you want." "I'm fine. she replied. All right, if you're staying, we need to get you some things. I can't go to church and leave you without anything. This is Easter week. We have church on Thursday and Easter Sunday. You need a dress and jewelry too. She nodded quietly. That's right, Maundy Thursday. I asked, you know about that? Caprice seemed taken aback. It must have been years since she thought of it. She began sharing memories. The Last Supper, the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter and Judas. Everyone has heard of that. Her knowledge surprised me. This wasn't an average woman. She had a past. Caprice, that's not your real name. What is it? She stared out, lost in thought. Honestly, I can't remember. I've been called Caprice for so long. Forget it. We arrived at the mall and found a parking spot. There's a nice store called Sherry's. Choose what you want for Easter. Don't forget shoes and other things. She looked at me suspiciously. How much can I spend? I shrugged. Just get what you like. Have them box it, and I'll pay when I arrive. You don't want to see it first? I thought for a moment. Maybe get 2 outfits, one for Thursday and another for Sunday. I'll see what you picked when we go together. Surprised, she asked, Where will you be? I'm going to Kay's. You need jewelry. I could tell she was uncertain. I hoped her past experiences had been better. I was just planning to buy a few things like I was at a grocery store. Maybe my view of her wasn't fair. She was just another person, young but didn't mean much to me beyond that. She agreed. Okay, I'll go to the boutique. After dropping her off at the mall, I half expected her to leave. I headed to the jewelry store, knowing I could take anything back if she didn't stay. As I entered Kay's, a friendly woman welcomed me. I didn't negotiate. I got a pair of garnet earrings and a matching necklace. I also chose some small hoop earrings and a simple gold chain with a sand dollar pendant. I wasn't sure what the sand dollar represented, but I remembered it was meaningful. I also picked a modest wristwatch, practical and simple. I spotted an attractive pearl ring, guessed her size, and bought that too. I wasn't experienced in buying jewelry. Thoughts of Angie came to mind. I should have bought her things while we were together. I understood why I hadn't. I was different then. None of the items were too expensive, but they looked decent. Given how things had been going, I probably wouldn't buy jewelry for someone again. When I reached the boutique, I was surprised Caprice hadn't left. She was sitting comfortably in one of the cushioned chairs with several bags at her feet. As soon as I arrived, a saleswoman greeted me and handed me the bill. It seemed low for what I had ordered. I paid, took her bags, and squeezed my bag into one of hers as we left the store. I paused and politely explained, I'm sorry, my hands are full. I can't hold your arm. To my surprise, she laughed and linked her arm with mine. I thought her laughter seemed real, but sometimes it can be hard to read people in her job. Once outside the mall, I asked her if she was hungry. She said she was, so I suggested a seafood restaurant. She had heard of it but never been, so I took her to Phillips, known for having the best seafood around. At the restaurant, she asked about Angie and my daughter. I assumed she knew much of the story already, so I shared more details. She listened carefully, though she didn't say much. I started to question if I was doing the right thing. I knew her job was different from most people's, and while she had acted accordingly at first, now she seemed different. I wondered if she was being genuine or just pretending. Either way, I wasn't too concerned since she hadn't gotten anything from me yet. After our meal, we drove back to the farm. Caprice asked if I wanted to see what she had bought. At first I said no, but when I noticed her slight disappointment, I changed my mind and told her to go ahead. She mentioned wanting to show me her new clothes, and I agreed. I figured she was trying to see how much I liked her, but I decided to keep some distance until she was tested for health issues. Caprice went into the bedroom to change into her first outfit. While she did that, I poured us both some iced tea in the kitchen. When I returned to the living room, I settled down on the sofa. I didn't wait long. She came back wearing what she wanted for Maundy Thursday. I was taken aback. She wore a salmon-colored skirt and jacket with a lovely white blouse and matching low-heeled shoes. She looked beautiful, innocent, and fresh. I'm not sure how to style my hair, she said. Do you have any ideas? I just stood there a bit stunned. No, maybe a ponytail? It's short, but there's enough for that. Yeah, sure, I finally managed. Caprice, you're stunning. She smiled, though it seemed tinged with sadness. Not too bad for someone like me, I suppose. I was at a loss for words. I understood her past better than most, yet this image didn't match the woman I had met. I felt the urge to say something uplifting. I have an idea, Caprice. From now until after Easter, let's pretend you're just an ordinary person. No more talking about your past, just enjoy our time together. Her expression changed. I hadn't thought about contacting Vince. He's actually the last person I want to speak to. I appreciate that you want to treat me normally. I can pretend if you can. Yes, I'd like that. I'll act like someone you met in the army who came to see you. How does that sound? I smiled. That sounds great. But you'll need a last name. Maybe Fisher? I can be Caprice Fisher. I thought about it and decided it fit. All right. Until after Easter, you're an old friend I met in the army, and your name is Caprice Fisher. Caprice smiled and twirled. Wait here. I'll come back with my Easter dress on. I stopped her. No, not yet, Miss Fisher. I have a few things for you first. Just a moment. I dashed into the bedroom, grabbed the jewelry bags, and rushed back, feeling excited. I took out a watch first. Hold out your wrist. Caprice extended her arm. I opened the watch box, took it out, and fastened it on her wrist. What do you think? Caprice turned her wrist. This is really nice, Caden. I can't remember the last time someone bought me something without wanting something in return. Thank you. I'll take care of it and return it after Easter. No, I said. That's yours to keep. I could tell she realized it wasn't overly pricey, but it seemed to make her happy. Thank you, Caden. Wait a moment. I've got something else for you to wear Thursday night. I took out a pair of lovely hoop earrings. I noticed you have pierced ears. I thought these might look nice. I watched as she took the earrings and put them in. She looked in the mirror. They're lovely, Caden. I grinned. I have one more thing, I said, taking out a necklace with a pendant. Can I put this on you? Caprice turned her back and waited. I fumbled a bit, but finally managed to clasp the necklace around her neck after a few tries. There. What do you think? Caprice gazed at the necklace and then the pendant. She gently touched it and softly spoke. There's a beautiful story I want to share, about the birth and death of Jesus found in this simple shell. If you look closely, you'll see 4 nail holes and a 5th made by a Roman's spear. On one side, the Easter lily, its center being the star that guided the shepherds from afar. The Christmas poinsettia is etched on the other side to remind us of his birthday. Now break the center open, and you will release 5 white doves waiting to spread goodwill and peace. This simple symbol was left by Christ for you and me to help spread his message through all eternity. I listened in awe. That's the story of the sand dollar. Caprice held the pendant for a moment longer and then let it drop. Oh, how silly. Where did that come from? You recited it beautifully. I bet very few people know it that well. Who taught you that? She seemed a bit shy, maybe even embarrassed. She answered quietly, I don't know. It just came out. I must have heard it somewhere. I sensed there was more to her story, glimpses of who she really was. To lighten the moment, I joked, Oh, I bet you heard it from a movie. She laughed a little, though it felt a bit awkward. Yeah, I got it from TV, she said as she quickly changed the subject. Let me show you my Sunday dress. I wanted to smile, but my mind was still on the poem she had recited. Sure, show me your Easter dress. A minute later, she came back wearing a pale yellow dress. It was a simple knee-length style with short sleeves and a round collar. She wore yellow shoes with low heels. Do you like it? I looked her over. The dress was modest, maybe not as fancy as she could have chosen. For the first time, I noticed her shoes had low heels, too. If she had worn taller shoes, she might have been taller than me. I felt a strange sense of respect for that. I opened the jewelry bag and took out some garnet earrings and a matching necklace. Here, try these on. She took the garnets and looked at them closely. In a soft voice, she said, These are pretty, Caden. I tried to make it light. Just something from a customer. Oh, and here's a ring. I handed her a pearl ring. She looked up and there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. She said softly but firmly, Until after Easter, you're just a nice guy, Caden. Despite everything, despite her past, I felt a strong connection and wanted to get closer, but I held back. Let's put everything away. I'll get your things so you can go to bed." As she moved toward the bedroom, she turned to me, holding up her hands. "Caden, could we skip locking me up tonight?" I hesitated. "But She interrupted me. "Not tonight. Just till after Easter. Can we just sleep together? I want to pretend. Just once. That you can hold me. I bought pajamas." I stood there feeling out of place. An old song came to mind. I replied, "I'll go brush my teeth and change." It was a strange evening. Here I was, in bed with her, arms around her. She wore cotton pajamas with her hands in front of her, and that was how we slept, or at least pretended to sleep. She lay quietly in my arms. It was the first time in a long time that I felt at ease, no pressure on me. Just before I pretended to sleep, I asked her, "Caprice, why did you choose the name Fisher?" She nestled closer and thoughtfully replied, "I don't know. It just came to me." We lay there in silence, connected, yet hardly touching, her warmth close to mine. Angie returned home just in time to see my truck leaving. What she witnessed worried her. When I got home, I noticed my ex-husband's familiar scent lingering. He often wore a spicy cologne, something I'd always remembered. In the kitchen, my mom was washing dishes. An apple pie sat on the table and 3 slices were missing. "Mom, who was here with Caden?" Mrs. Bradford placed the last cup in the cupboard and said, "Caden brought a friend over." My chest tightened. "Really? Who?" "Her name's Caprice. She seemed nice." Caden had been back from the army for a while, and during that time, he hadn't been around anyone, no other women that I knew of. I had kept my distance, perhaps to hurt him for leaving. I recalled my struggles before he left and how hard I had worked to get my life on track while he was gone. When he came back, all those hidden feelings, anger, uncertainty came flooding back. I once thought he had abandoned me, but over time I figured out he had been loyal. Deep down, I never stopped loving him. But that made me feel vulnerable, and I didn't like it. So I kept my distance, making choices I knew were wrong. I pushed him away, even kept him from seeing our daughter. I wanted to appear strong and independent, but a part of me didn't know how to let go of the hurt. Sometimes I acted just to prove I didn't need him, even when I knew that wasn't true. Hearing about Caprice, I tried to seem uninterested. "What does she look like?" Mom studied me and said, "She's attractive. Light brown hair, green eyes. She seems mature." I glanced at myself, thin, plain, never one to stand out. Caden had been the only one who truly saw me for more. Things had once been good between us. After his return, I hoped we could find that again. I didn't know what I wanted from him: forgiveness, understanding, or just another chance. I called Bernard. When he answered, I hesitated and said, "Can we meet tomorrow instead?" He agreed, and I ended the call. Mom looked over. "Angie, tomorrow is Holy Thursday. Emily has dance class. You should be with her." She was right. I needed to be more present for Emily, and for myself. I wanted to learn more about the woman who had been in Caden's truck. The doctor visits. I woke up early Thursday morning, which was good. Dr. Silas Dean, the local doctor, arrived right on time at 9 a.m. He knocked, and I welcomed him at the door. "Good to see you," I said, shaking his hand. "You mentioned you had someone who needed care?" he asked. "Yes," I replied with a nod. "Please come in, and I will let her know." Caprice was still resting peacefully. She hadn't had a good sleep in a long time, so I understood why she was enjoying this comfort. There were no demands on her, just safety, warmth, and some tranquility. It was something new for her, but it seemed to help. She stirred when I entered the room. "Caprice, the doctor is here." She sat up and brushed her hair out of her face. "I'll go freshen up quickly." "No need," I said. "He's here to help. Let's not keep him waiting." She placed her feet on the floor, feeling the cool surface, which made her pause and smile softly. "Let me at least tidy my hair." I noticed how much better she looked. The new haircut highlighted her features. A good night's rest had added color to her face. Her eyes seemed clearer and more awake, and there was a sense of calm in her expression as sunlight streamed in. There was still a lot to heal, but this was a positive start. I liked how the sun shining through the window framed her face. For a moment, I forgot about her past struggles. "I'll tell him you'll be right out," I said, stepping out of the bedroom and closing the door behind me. Caprice went to the bathroom, brushed her teeth, and ran her fingers through her shorter hair. The new style made her feel youthful. She put on the blouse and skirt she had worn the day before and left some items behind in the drawer. She stood up, smoothed her blouse, and stepped into the living room. She approached me and placed her hand on my shoulder. "Do I look all right?" she asked quietly, sounding a bit unsure. I could tell she was thinking about her past and wondering how she measured up. I gave her a quick glance. "You look wonderful." Caprice had faced many challenges, but my compliment seemed to lift her spirits. She blushed slightly, and I hoped my words made her feel valued. "Doc, this is Caprice. She has been through a lot. Can you check her to make sure everything is okay?" Dr. Dean looked at her thoughtfully and replied, "Normally, it's best to have another woman present for a checkup, but Caden has told me a bit about your situation. If you're okay with it, Miss Fisher, I'd like to examine you." Caprice unbuttoned her blouse, placing it on a chair. She adjusted her skirt and moved closer. Standing there seemed to make her uneasy, as I could tell from her body language. Seeing her discomfort, she briefly tried to cover herself before letting her hands drop. It was clear she felt shy, and she looked at me with uncertainty. I could see her struggle with the situation became genuine embarrassment. I tried to reassure her, "It's just for a moment, Caprice." She offered me a small, encouraging smile. Dr. Dean began to look her over, noting her injuries. "This is a bit troubling. It seems someone has not treated you kindly," he said, glancing at me. "I may need to file a report." Caprice looked worried. "A report? They will investigate?" "They usually do, but with a statement from Caden and my recommendation, it shouldn't go far unless you want to take more steps." Caprice seemed to relax a bit. "No complaint here." Silas stepped behind her. "Could you lean forward a bit?" Caden asked if I could take a closer look. "Would that be all right, Miss Fisher?" She hesitated, but then nodded and leaned forward. Dr. Dean put on gloves and began his examination gently. After some time, he stepped back, removed the gloves, and moved to the table. "Do we have any clean towels?" "How about some paper towels?" I suggested. "They'll work. Just place them here on the edge of the table," he pointed. Once I placed the towels on the table, Dr. Dean gestured, "Please have a seat here, Miss Fisher. I would like to check you further." Caprice walked to the table, then surprisingly gestured for me to turn away. I obliged. I could hear her adjusting herself on the paper towels. "Lean back a bit, please," the doctor instructed. I realized I could peek if I looked through the window, but I chose to stay facing away. Dr. Dean continued the examination carefully, making sure Caprice was as comfortable as possible. After looking her over, he said, "You can get dressed now." As Caprice put her blouse and skirt back on, I turned around. Dr. Dean spoke to me. "Her back looks good under the circumstances. The ointment is working. I will give you another prescription for her treatment. There are simple options for any discomfort that might help her." He looked at Caprice and asked, "How old are you? 29? 30? She replied, 30. "Miss Fisher, I don't want to worry you, but your situation might have taken a toll on your health. I can't tell you what to do, but it might be smart to think about other ways to make money." He paused and added, "One last thing. I'd like to take a small blood sample and a couple of other tests." Caprice asked, "Why do you need a saliva sample?" The doctor explained, "With the blood sample, I can check for some infections and learn more about your health history if any records are available from when you were young." Caprice hesitated. "No, I don't want any DNA taken." I stepped forward and gently placed my hands on her shoulders. "That's all right. No DNA. We'll only take a little blood for the infection tests." Caprice had reacted quickly. She said, "Just a blood test, just for the infections." The doctor took the sample and smiled. "I'll have the results ready in a few days. I'll prepare a report, and someone might bring it over later for you to sign. Someone from the state might also come by." I showed the doctor to the door and then sat beside Caprice on the couch. "Do you want to take a shower so I can put some ointment on your cuts? If you'd like, you can lie back down for a bit afterward." She looked at me, tired and unsure. "What are you going to do with me?" I reached out to touch her neck gently, but she pulled away. I decided to back off. "We're here to take care of your cuts and bruises. Also, I'm taking you out this afternoon, and I want to take you to church tonight." She interrupted. You know what I mean. Oh, that? Well, a dentist will take care of your teeth. We'll find a doctor for your needs, and I bought a kit to help with your skin. Maybe we'll even think about a manicure or just a nice massage. She frowned. Not all that. You know what I really mean? I'm not sure what you mean. You know, when are you going to let me go back out? Back out? You know, back to work. I understood where this talk was going, but I pretended not to. She seemed to be trying to distance herself from her past, but was compelled to bring it up again. I needed to change the subject. It's a big farm. I'm not sure what you'd be good at yet. We have horses, and I run roadside stands. She exclaimed, I mean back out on the street. I lowered my voice. I get what you mean, and I told you, I'm not involved in that. If that's where you want to go, it's your choice. So if I run away? I took her hand firmly, not letting her pull away. It's Thursday. We agreed not to talk about that until after Easter. 4 days is a long time. I'll run away. I leaned back on the couch, wrapping my arms around her shoulders, holding her close. She struggled to break free, but I held on until she calmed down, loosening my grip a little. You can't leave yet. You'll see when it's time, and if you're still determined, I won't stop you. When will that be? I can't say right now. I know you're not ready yet, but when I think it's time, and if you still want to go, you'll know. She replied sarcastically. Oh, really? How will I know? I gently lifted her chin to meet my gaze. You'll know when we get your things. Caprice pulled away. Let go of me. I'm going to take a shower. And she walked back to the bedroom. The Curse of the Scots, Part 3. A confused man and 2 troubled women. Caden has some thoughts. I've been thinking about the changes in my life. It's all been so quick and confusing. I've known this woman for just 4 days, yet I feel different. It reminds me of an old movie called People Will Talk, where a man falls for a younger woman in just a few days. The story was playful, but somehow I relate to it. I think she feels some kind of connection too. It's Holy Thursday, and Caprice is deep in thought. Caden thinks he can change my life by helping me, but he doesn't understand my reality. I feel stuck, unable to go back to any normal life. But does it even matter? Caden encourages me. Come on, you can't sleep the whole day away. Caprice rolled over and glanced at the clock. It was past noon. Oh, come on, get up. I want to show you the farm. I opened the closet and picked out a pair of jeans and a shirt. I glanced back at the sleepy woman. Time to get up, the day's moving on. I watched as she got up from the bed and went to the dresser. She put on jeans and a shirt. Looking around, she said, I don't have any socks. I pretended to complain. You can't remember it all. Just wear the shoes without socks today. Once she was dressed, with her hair neat and face clean, she followed me to the big pickup truck. I helped her in, climbed in my side, and asked, Ready? She looked a bit grumpy, which I found funny. Just a few days ago, she had been quite scared. What, you going to show me around a ranch? She asked. I laughed. Nope, South Fork. For the next hour and a half, I drove her around the farm, showing her the barns, horses, chicken coops, and where the pigs and cattle were kept. Then I took her to the area where I was preparing to plant corn and to my riverfront property, where I checked a crab pot. It was empty. I parked the truck at an overlook by the river. What do you think? She smiled, and I thought she looked happy. Well, this place is nice. The only thing missing is a family, she said. I chuckled. Tell me, is there a chance for that? She became serious. You need to remember who I am. I keep my personal space private, and no one gets too close unless it's safe. Then she added, I've been off the pill a few days, so I'm a bit surprised I haven't started my period. You can have children? She rubbed her stomach gently and then her chest. I've missed my period a few times. I was once taken to a doctor who helped me, so nothing has changed for good. Have you ever loved someone? I mean someone real, not just a dealer. That's a bit personal. So there was someone. I thought so, but I was wrong. When was that? I can't recall. I scratched my face, thinking I needed to shave before we went to church. Have you ever thought about having kids? No, I don't like kids. They can be messy and demanding. They just get in the way. Okay, what do you like to do? This is silly. What do you think I enjoy? Just remember, I've had a tough life. I'm sorry. You don't have to tell me anything if it's hard. No, I want to. Have you ever seen someone struggle? It can be too much, the things people go through. I reached over and gently held her wrist, but she got scared and jumped out of the truck. I didn't know how to help her or what she was escaping, but I knew I had to catch her. I checked the truck was secure and ran after her. For someone who had been through a lot, she was surprisingly quick. I had to run almost 100 yards before I caught up. I tried to hold her, and we both fell to the ground. She started shouting and thrashing. Even after everything she had faced, she had a lot of energy. Then suddenly, she stopped struggling and began to cry. I felt a deep worry for her. As she lay there, I saw her emotions change. The anger and hurt seemed to fade, and she looked lost, her eyes a bit dull. Panic swept through me. Caprice? Caprice! I pulled her closer, hoping to bring her back to me. I gave her a gentle shake. Slowly, she began to respond as if coming back from a far-off place. I don't remember what happened. I was running, and you caught me. I said, you ran. I caught you. You struggled, then you cried, and then it felt like you were gone. I remember you asked me questions, something about kids. Yes, you mentioned something about children. I think I might have had one. Or maybe I was expecting. I'm not sure now. I think they took it away, or maybe it didn't make it. There was talk of an operation, which I didn't agree to. I remember saying no to something. I think it upset them. I just can't recall everything. What do you mean they were upset? I don't remember. Do you believe a child might have been involved? I think so. But it's all a blur. I don't really know. Something might have happened that affected you deeply. Please, I can't talk about this anymore. I stayed close by, trying to support her without pushing too much. She looked overwhelmed. Hey, I said gently, trying to lighten the mood. If we're going to go to church, we should get going. I stood and offered my hand to help her up. Let's head back to the truck. She followed, quiet and shaky. As we walked, she whispered, I heard you say we were going home, but I really don't believe you. I think I'll end up back where I was, somewhere I don't want to be. I stopped and looked at her. No one is going to make you do anything. You're safe now. But I could see the doubt in her eyes, not just about me, but about everything. Back at Angie's. It was almost 6 p.m., I called out. Mom, I'm going out with Bernard, don't wait up. Then I hurried out to his truck. Bernard wasn't my favorite person. He could be tough, but he was a distraction. I also knew Caden didn't like him, which helped me keep my distance from my past. Caden had been my husband before my dad forced us to divorce. Looking back, my dad wasn't entirely wrong. Caden worked hard, but he wasn't what I thought I needed then. I loved him, though. Back in school, I felt invisible. People only paid attention to tease me. Caden was older, and I admired him from a distance. He was everything the other girls talked about, handsome and confident. I never thought he'd even notice me. But one day, after school when I was walking home, some boys made a comment as I passed by. Caden was with them. I tried to ignore it, but then he surprised me. He walked away from the group, opened the door of his truck, and asked if I wanted a ride. I couldn't believe it. He even helped me with my seatbelt. That moment changed everything. After that, he started spending more time with me. He took me to movies, the beach places I'd only seen other girls go. He brought me food and treated me like I mattered. I wasn't used to that kind of attention. Even though I was shy, he made me feel safe. For a while, it felt like I was living someone else's dream. But things shifted. Toward the end of that summer, after I graduated, everything started to change. I was supposed to go to college, but Caden convinced me to stay. My parents were furious, but I didn't care. I thought I had found my place, my forever. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. Riding in Bernard's truck. Now sitting next to Bernard, I wondered how my life had fallen apart. I had a child with Caden. I kept them apart. I didn't know what I was trying to prove or what I was running from. He had been so kind once, so caring. Then things became strained. Maybe I changed. Maybe he did. I didn't know anymore. I remembered the times he used to hold me quietly without judgment. Sometimes, even now, I missed that more than anything. Caden was always very caring. At first, he paid a lot of attention to me, which was new for me. He would comment on how I should dress and things he liked. I thought he was just showing interest, but later, it felt like expectations I didn't completely understand. As our relationship grew stronger, I began to change. I stopped doing things I enjoyed. I started focusing on what pleased him, even if I didn't want to do it. There were times I didn't recognize myself. It felt like I was becoming someone else. But I loved him so much that I told myself his requests were normal. I tried to do everything he wanted, thinking it would keep us close. And for a while, that seemed to work. But then his behavior started to change. Sometimes he made hurtful comments or treated me like I was just there for him. He embarrassed me publicly, and I stayed silent, unsure how to react. I thought it was just a rough patch, that love should have struggles. Then one night, something happened that changed everything. Both of us were shaken. He repeatedly apologized, and I could see even he didn't fully understand why he acted that way. I was confused, but when he asked me to marry him, I said yes. At that moment, I didn't know what else to do. In the months that followed, I lost myself even more. I turned to substances to cope, and I stopped caring about things I once loved. I was drifting away from the girl I had been. Now I found myself again, riding in Bernard's truck, heading to a place I didn't want to be. Part of me hoped Caden would find out. I didn't know why I wanted his attention, maybe because a small part of me still remembered when he truly saw me. I wasn't proud of that feeling, but it lingered. Back at the house. Inside the small brick house, a child stood by the window. The door had chipped paint, and the frame was a bit loose. She watched quietly as her mother drove away with the truck. In her hands was an old box. The lid was faded, taped at the edges. A simple drawing of a stick figure had been scrubbed off, barely noticeable under the marks. It was a game her mother had promised they would enjoy together someday. Emily sat on the floor, opened the box carefully, and started laying out the cards. One for Mommy, one for Grandmommy, and one for me. She wasn't sure of the rules, but she tried to make sense of it. It was her own version of something meant to be shared. Caden gets a call. The phone rang. It was Mrs. Bradford. Her voice was tense. "She's gone out with Bernard again," she said. "I thought you should know. She saw Caprice in your truck, and it affected her more than I expected." The news weighed heavily on me. I thought about Emily, how much she had grown, and how much she was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about Angie anymore. It was about what kind of world we were creating for that little girl. She would soon start asking questions, and I wanted Angie to be able to give her the right answers. She wouldn't be able to do that if she was with someone like Bernard Keith. I immediately called Dell. He didn't like it when I asked for help. He mentioned having plans, but I urged him to check on things at the wagon wheel. He hesitated, saying he was still only 19, but I laughed and promised to make it up to him if he helped tonight. He agreed. Dell's a great kid, so I interrupted Dell's evening. Now it was time for Caprice and me to head to church and probably disrupt a lot of other people's evenings too. I was dressed in a light tan suit with a blue shirt, dark tie, and brown shoes that were quite uncomfortable. Caprice came out in her salmon jacket and skirt. I thought to myself, "Caprice, you look amazing." I watched her blush. Here was a woman who some people might judge harshly, looking radiant. I felt a mix of emotions, reminding me of a younger version of myself. She twirled around gracefully, knowing I appreciated it. Looking at me sincerely, she said, "There's something about you. You feel different from other men." I smiled and replied, "Well, I'm not what you might think." She said, "I know that, but I feel it's important for me to bring you happiness." I smiled back, curious about what she meant. "See, I'm smiling." She hesitated. "Can I say something without you thinking I'm being fake?" I replied, "Sure. If you want to tell me I'm handsome, go ahead." "Well, you are handsome. I thought so the first time I saw you. You seemed out of place that day." I hadn't realized that. "You put yourself at risk doing that." "Yeah, it was tough. Finding my place was hard, and I faced challenges," she shared, giving me a glimpse into her past. I was surprised. "You would return to him knowing that?" "Caden, I don't have to now. I have a choice. I told you I don't see it that way. No one owns you." "I just feel lost sometimes," she admitted. "Who would want me?" "Dr. Dean didn't see you as lost. He thought you were young, Caprice." I just thought I could help you feel good tonight. Why? Because I care. I wouldn't do it without a reason. You want me to feel appreciated, to think about something beyond the past. Fine, Caden. I appreciate that. I think you're great, but if we share a moment, I hope it's for something meaningful. It would make me happy if I could see you smile tonight. I picked up my keys and said, "Come on. Your talent can help us shine when we sing tonight." Her face lit up a bit. "I can do that." "Have you sung before?" "Maybe, but I don't remember." I took the raincoat I'd bought her. "Here, let me help you with this. I don't want you to catch a cold. We need you feeling your best." I helped her put on her coat and guided her out the door and into the truck. After getting in, I started the engine and we drove to the church. As we drove, many thoughts filled my head. Should I let the woman beside me influence me? She was interesting. I worried about Dell at the wagon wheel. I hoped Angie was okay. Should I file a complaint about Angie? Who could help her get a job? If I filed a complaint, who could help her with the support she might need? I didn't want to rely only on social services. I felt uncertain about my own future. I worried I might turn into someone like those who raised me, and I feared being alone. I recalled the day I learned about Uncle John's passing. Uncle Mitchell found him in a shed. They said he had a heart attack at work. Stump listened and then suggested I talk to my parents about it. She always saw the bigger picture. Entering the church with Caprice brought me peace. The smell of polished wood and the soft sound of people talking reminded me of my childhood. I hoped today would be special and that Caprice would enjoy it. Mrs. Stump came over, her warm smile brightening the room. "Caden, it's so good to see you. And you must be Caprice." She took Caprice's hand in hers, welcoming her. "We've heard so much about you." Caprice smiled a bit shyly. "Nice to meet you, ma'am." Mrs. Stump nodded. "You've chosen a great day to come. We have a lovely service planned." As we took our seats, I felt I belonged. The congregation sang hymns in harmony, and I watched Caprice sway gently to the music. Something about her expression filled me with hope. Maybe this was the fresh start we needed. The sermon was about community and support, important themes to me. It reminded me of family and the connections we value. After the service, as people talked, I saw Caprice laughing and chatting happily with new friends. As we left church, I realized how much I needed this moment, not just for myself, but for us as a family. I squeezed Caprice's hand softly. "I'm glad you came today." She smiled back, her eyes bright. "Me too. I think I might like it here." Walking to the car, I felt a renewed sense of hope, not just for Caprice or Angie, but for everyone around us. Maybe we were moving toward better days. Stump said I could park my truck in her driveway any time. Did that annoy Abbott? Mrs. Stump grabbed my arm and playfully turned me around before I got 2 steps inside the church. "Caden, you look nice. Who's the charming lady?" "Hi, Mrs. Stump. This is my friend Caprice Fisher. She's visiting from out of state. We're old friends." "Caprice, this is Mrs. Stump. She's a kind lady, and I know you'll like her." Mrs. Stump took Caprice's hand. "Caprice, what a beautiful name, and aren't you lovely? An army friend of Caden's. I love your hair. Those green eyes of yours are so striking. Are you a Methodist?" Caprice said, "No, I'm actually Presbyterian." I was surprised. How did she know she was a Presbyterian? She hadn't mentioned going to church much, but maybe I was wrong. She must have gone somewhere. Or how else would she know about different churches? Something felt off. The old lady turned back to me. "You be good to her, Caden. She seems delightful." I felt like I was back in high school. "Yes, ma'am, but we're just good friends." Mrs. Stump handed us each a bulletin. "Enjoy the service." I took Caprice's arm again, and we walked into the sanctuary to sit in one of the central pews. An older lady, Mrs. McNeil, started playing the organ, missing only a few notes. Caprice and I sat quietly and looked at the bulletin. As I watched Caprice glance at the bulletin, something seemed off. She seemed to struggle to read it. I asked, "Are you okay? Can you read?" "Of course I can read. The lighting is just poor." The church lighting was fine. People were still coming in. I wondered if she needed glasses. "Caprice, you can't see the words, can you?" "No, it's a bit blurry. I guess I forgot my glasses." I recalled that she hadn't brought any glasses. Caprice, when I took you home, you didn't have glasses. She looked at me, confused and concerned. I said, well, I guess getting glasses is something we'll need to arrange. And she surprised me with one of her lovely smiles. I really liked it when she smiled like that. I'll call an eye doctor Monday. She gave me a curious smile back and said, that would be helpful. I looked around. The church seemed decent. I guessed maybe 18 or 20 people, a good number for a service. The tone of the music changed, and then Pastor Cook walked down the aisle. Pastor Bill Cook was an older gentleman. He had been the pastor here for about 10 years, having come from a church 20 miles away. Methodist pastors usually change churches over time. Pastor Cook started by welcoming everyone and reading a list of names for prayer. He then looked at me, and I signaled discreetly for him not to mention any visitors. He didn't notice and asked, do we have any visitors this evening? I glanced at Caprice, who seemed embarrassed. We were stuck. I raised my hand. Pastor Cook smiled and said, one of our newer members, Caden McLeish, has brought someone. Would you like to introduce us, Caden? I stood up and looked down at Caprice, who looked angelic in the soft light. This is my friend from the Army, Caprice Fisher. Caprice quickly stood up and then sat back down, and her graceful movements made me nervous. I noticed many people smiling at us, which I found uncomfortable. I sat back down, hoping to avoid further attention. The service was dark and solemn for Holy Thursday. The hymns were sad, and Pastor Cook gave a short sermon about the church calendar, from Christmas to Easter Sunday. I felt moved and glanced at Caprice, noticing she seemed touched as well. We partook in communion. I was surprised that Caprice, without her glasses, couldn't read the words but knew them all by heart. When we knelt for communion, she chose grape juice, and I did too. It amazed me how someone with her past could have such self-control and spiritual wisdom. I had asked Dr. Dean to collect some DNA samples from her, but I wondered about fingerprints. I couldn't believe someone without a criminal record existed. I needed to find something she had touched a glass or something to figure out who she really was. The service ended quietly with the altar being cleared. Caprice and I drove home without talking. I wanted to ask her about what she knew, but she looked so content that I decided to let it be. We got home around 9 p.m. Caprice went to change into pajamas, the same ones she had worn before. She mentioned that she had interacted with older men in a friendly way. She looked great, but it made me feel uneasy. I couldn't tell if she was being herself or acting. I kept my thoughts to myself. After church, Caprice wanted to do something nice for Caden. I wanted to show Caden my appreciation for all he had done for me. I thought he was setting something up, and I had seen similar situations before, someone being nice and then revealing their true colors. But Caden was different. He was genuinely a farmer and didn't have any typical sidekicks. He knew regular people, a grandmother, a nephew, a girl he helped through school, and nice older ladies from church. I was right. He stood out as a good person. I approached where Caden was sitting on the sofa, focused on the television remote. I knelt in front of him. Caden looked at Caprice with admiration. I couldn't blame him. She was lovely. Her big green eyes and beautiful hair were hard to ignore. She reached out and rested her hand on my leg. I felt a wave of emotions and said softly, "No, thanks. I appreciate it, but it doesn't feel right. I just can't." "Is it because of my past?" she asked. "Yeah, kind of. You're amazing, but I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that. I don't really know who you are." She sat beside me, hands in her lap. "I understand." "No, you don't fully get it. I think you're wonderful, but I want something different for my life." "What do you mean?" "Let's be honest, Caprice isn't your real name." She changed the topic. "Are you serious about helping me?" "What about the other concerns?" I asked. "And the glasses?" "Yes, I mean it." "Why? Does it matter?" "I think it does. When I found you, your situation seemed difficult. I have property and money, and no one to share it with. A little help wouldn't hurt." "I could say the same. Everyone I've met likes you, but you act like you're alone. I feel like I have nothing to give, so why not help each other?" I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and gently gave her a friendly kiss on the cheek. "Let's make a deal. How about I rest my head in your lap while we watch some TV together?" She responded, "That's not exactly what I had in mind." I laid my head down, my arm around her waist. "You smell nice." She leaned back and said, "All right, give me the remote." I handed it to her, and she began flipping through the channels until she settled on an older movie with Meryl Streep and Pierce Brosnan called Mamma Mia. We sat together to watch it. We didn't watch for long. The comforting scent of her presence made me feel relaxed. I started to lightly touch her arm while resting. Caprice leaned in and gave me a gentle touch on my cheek. Then my phone rang. "Excuse me, it might be Dell." "Dell?" Caprice asked. "Yeah, he's checking up on my ex-wife, Angie." I got up and walked to the dining room table to answer it, picking up the phone. It was Dell. I pressed the button and asked, "Dell, what's going on?" "You need to get down here." Bernard took her into the back room. "The pool room?" She didn't want to go. I think he has a plan. His whole group is back there. "That's concerning." "What's wrong?" Caprice asked. "Angie went to the wagon wheel. It's a bar nearby. She's there with the guy who caused trouble before. Dell says they have her in the back room. You need to go to her." "This is frustrating. There are too many of them." "Maybe you should call for help." "They won't do anything." "You have friends." "No, it's just me and Dell, but I can't ask him for help." "I'll go." "You? What can you do?" "I'll figure out something." I looked at her and she was serious. "Okay, grab your coat." 2 minutes later, we were in the truck and parked outside the wagon wheel 20 minutes after that. Dell was waiting outside. He came over and said, "They took her to the back. I don't know, but I don't think anything has happened yet." I couldn't wait any longer. She was my wife, and I started toward the front door. Dell saw Caprice in the truck. "Hi, Caprice. What are you doing here?" "I'm here to help Caden." Dell glanced back toward the front of the bar just as Caden walked in. "He's determined. I called my dad and then the rest of the family. I wish he had waited." Another truck pulled up, followed by another. 4 men got out all together. The oldest of the men walked over to Dell. "Why couldn't the others wait?" "You know Caden's dad?" Dell's dad looked at the other men. "Come on, let's go." Dell stayed outside with Caprice. Caprice asked, "Who are those guys?" "They're Caden's brothers." Caprice's eyes widened. "They?" Dell smiled. "It's a family thing." Inside the wagon wheel, Caden walked to the bar. I approached the bartender. "Elvis, where's my wife?" He pointed to a door leading to the pool room. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to the door, opened it, and walked in. There on the pool table was my ex-wife. She still had her top on, but her pants were down. One man had his hand over her mouth, but I could still hear her muffled cries. Her face was tear-streaked, and I could see red marks on her wrists. I stepped in front of the crowd. "Let her go." Bernard had his hand over her mouth. "Well, look who's here. It's the little Jew." Everyone laughed at his comment. Bernard said, "What are you here to save your ex-wife?" I said, "Let her go." Bernard moved toward me. "You're going to need more than that." Then we heard another voice behind us, a deeper voice saying, "He's got help." I recognized my oldest brother's voice. Bernard looked at the 4 men who had just come in. "Looks like Caden brought some backup." I hadn't realized until then that all my brothers were there. Bernard turned to his friends. "What now?" One of them, squirrely red Combs, said, "Let her go, Bernard." Bernard looked around. Even though they were outnumbered, he knew nobody wanted to confront my brothers. He pulled Angie off the pool table and tossed her toward me. "Here, take her." I caught my sobbing ex-wife. "This is the last time. Understand?" Bernard just glared at me, but then his expression changed into a grin. "Keep her. She's too much for me anyway." I looked down at my ex-wife. I expected her to be in bad shape, but she seemed all right. I held her tightly. "Let's get out of here," I said, turning to my brothers. Not knowing what else to do, I nodded and walked past them. As I went by, I heard my oldest brother say, "Always the difficult one." I quickened my pace to the front door. Outside, I found Dell. Confusingly, I said, "I'm glad they're here." Dell patted me on the arm. "It's about family, Caden. You should know that." I opened the passenger door, then the back door. Caprice climbed in, and I sat Angie beside her. "Caprice, this is my ex-wife, Angie. Angie, this is Caprice. She's an old friend from the army." Caprice smiled. "Hi, Angie." Angie, feeling overwhelmed, quietly replied, "Hi," and started to cry. I asked, "Where do you want to go, Angie?" "I can't go home like this." "How about Pastor Cook's place?" Angie sniffed. "Can I go home with you?" As I drove down the gravel road, I glanced back to see my brothers and Dell watching us leave. My oldest brother looked frustrated. I thought, well, I messed that up. I turned to Angie. "All right." It would be a short drive, but I felt uneasy. It was just me and my ex-wife in the front with Caprice in the back. Caprice reached over to comfort Angie. "You have a daughter, right?" "I do. And he," she looked at me, "wants to take her from me. He can't have her." She leaned forward, almost shouting, "She's mine, and you'll never take her." I swerved the truck sharply. Angie stumbled into Caprice's arms. I stopped the truck, pulled on the emergency brake, and turned to Angie. "I didn't leave you. I returned you to your parents, and I want to help. She's my daughter, too." "Don't I have a right?" Angie shouted back. "You don't have any rights. You left me with my father. I was stuck in his house. I couldn't go anywhere. Look at the windows. He put bars on them to keep me inside. That's what you did. She's my baby. She's all I have." I tried to speak, but Caprice had her arms around my ex-wife. Angie raised her voice. "I loved you, Caden. I would have done anything for you. You left me with those old people. You know who I mean, that Libby. Yeah, that Libby woman who worked at the diner." I finally managed to say, "I never." She interrupted me, still angry and with tears in her eyes. "You can't lie to me. I know everything. My dad told me about Libby. He said when you got out you would call social services and try to take my baby. You want to take her away from me," she lunged at me, but I quickly stepped back. "You can't have her. You can't ever have her." Caprice pulled her back and held her in a comforting hug. She looked at me with a mix of confusion and blame. Angie paused for a moment, crying softly in Caprice's arms, but I knew this was just a moment before things got worse. I needed to reach her before it escalated. "Angie, I didn't know what your dad did. I mean about the bars and everything. I never did anything with Libby except talk a little. I don't want to take your baby away." I saw she was getting ready to argue again. I spoke quickly. "I don't want to take Emily. I just want to be part of her life. I want us to be together." "Angie, I want us to be a family, to be continued.